Why'd you do it? Darius. That's the question they'll throw at him later after the cameras, after the headlines, after the foundation prints his name on glossy brochures like a trophy. He'll think back to this moment, the hiss of the fryer, the sting of bleach on his hands, the smell of rain-soaked asphalt bleeding through the door each time it opens. He'll remember the silence that follows when a black boy stands up in a room bouillat to keep him small. He hadn't planned to change anything tonight. He had planned to eat, but sometimes one quiet act of decency lands louder than thunder. Before we go any further, pause for 5 seconds. If true stories of courage and consequence move you, subscribe for weekly cinematic narratives, where integrity gets tested and kindness becomes a force. It costs nothing, and it changes who this story reaches. Now back to the diner where the question began. The rain is mean. It doesn't fall. It interrogates. Each drop slams the pane like a knuckle, rattling the gold-flecked vinyl booths and the chrome-edged counter of Murphy's Diner, a place that pretends at timeless and barely survives month to month. The open sign trembles red against the night. Fifth and Main is a river of reflections, headlights, sirens, the halo of a traffic light pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Darius Johnson stacks plates 2 at a time. 17. Brown-skinned, precise. Precise. The fluorescent tubes overhead crush the color out of everything, but the sheen on his forearm still catches when he turns toward the dish sink. Steam rises. Grease beads. His fingers are split at the knuckles where the hot water chews them open. It's almost closing time. He wants to hurry. He's earned it. Clock out. Kid, says Big Mike from the pass, voice like gravel that forgot how to be friendly. Storm's not letting up. Yes, sir. Darius dries his palms on a towel that will never really be clean and glances at the wall clock. 9:47 p.m. His stomach knocks against his ribs like a trapped hand. At the counter, 2 regulars. Dale in a camo cap and Ray with a sunburn that stays even in January follow him with their eyes. The way store detectors hum when you walk through. They lower their voices just enough to pretend they tried. That Elm Street kid again. Dale says stirring sugar he won't taste. At least he's working. Ray says, could be worse. Most of 'em just hang around. Most of who? The sentence has a tail. Everyone in the room hears it swish. Darius turns away. He's learned this choreography absorb. Don't echo. Let the sting pass through and park in the steel. He counts his money inside his pocket like a ritual. $3. 47 inches soft. Damp bills and coins that smell of 10 hands. He walked to the diner through 3 miles of wind because the bus fare only went one way. Today, he's worked 3 shifts without eating here, saving every tip. He's buying a burger and fries tonight. He's not buying food. He's buying a seat on the other side of the counter, a small rebellion. He looks up and sees table 6. An old white couple sit there, drenched and shivering. The man's suit coat is dark with rain, hugging his shoulders with a wet slap each time he moves. The woman's silver hair clumps against her cheeks. On the table, a leather portfolio, rain-spotted, edges worn like expensive things get when they've traveled. They have 2 coffees and empty saucers. The man opens a gold pocket watch and shuts it, opens it and shuts it, like time might be different if he checks often enough. Sandy. The waitress lingers near the sugar caddies, clutching the check like it can bite. She breathes through her nose and chooses mercy in her face, not in her hands. I'm sorry, she says, walking over. Mike's policy, no tabs, folks. The woman's mouth pinches, shame, moving like a ripple under the skin. We seem to have misplaced our wallet. We didn't mean to. We'll settle up, the man promises. The man promises. The kind of tone that carried weight for decades and suddenly doesn't hold a dime in a storm. We had a breakdown on the interstate. And policy's policy. Big Mike says, not unkind. Not unkind either. Just the arithmetic of a diner that's struggling. I got bills too. We understand, the man replies. He tries to smile. The rain slaps the window in applause. Darius watches all of it from the dish pit. Something sticks under his ribs. He should mind his own business. That's what Miss Ruby says when the world is practicing to be cruel. But the woman's hands shake when she gathers her purse. And when she tucks the leather portfolio under her arm, he catches a flash of embossed gold. Some crest, unfamiliar and familiar all at once. The way you know a promise when you see it, even if you can't read the words. The couple stands. They move with that terrible dignity people keep when they have no money left to spend on pride. Kid, Dale murmurs from the counter, not bothering to hide the smirk. Kitchen's that way. He points his thumb toward the back, like maybe Darius forgot which door he belongs behind. Sandy shoots Dale a look, but her lips stay lashed. Big Mike doesn't hear, or he hears and chooses the register drawer. The couple hits the door. The wind shoulder checks it open, flinging needles of rain across the tile. The woman looks back, and Darius wants, almost, to look away, because there's something private about the way sorrow sits on a face when the public has turned its head. His tray is waiting in the pass. Burger, fries, steam rising like a blessing nobody gave him. He reaches for it and feels his fingers stiffen, like his hand belongs to someone else who wants something different. The diner keyets. It's that hush that isn't silence. The one where you can hear people choosing who they are. He lifts the tray. Hey, Sandy, he says, and his voice chooses him. Hold up. The couple turns. The man's eyes are a startling blue, almost too sharp for someone who looks that frail. Beware the old who learn to command, while smiling Miss Ruby says that too. The woman holds her breath like a glass she's trying not to drop. Darius walks the tray to table 6. He can feel the counter eyes reading the move, writing a story he didn't ask for. This one's on me tonight, he says, and sets the plate down, hands steady in a way that makes him feel older than he is. The diner stops breathing. Even the rain tilts its head. Oh, sweetheart, the woman says, we couldn't possibly. You can, he says. My grandma says, kindness is the only thing that multiplies when you give it away. The man studies him like a photograph he's been looking for in a stack of strangers. Son, you worked for that, he says. You should eat, so should you. Darius answers. We all earned something that brought us here. Sandy wipes at her eye with her wrist. I'll get fresh coffee, she says, and she moves with that particular grace people keep in storage. For when the world acts cheap, the man fishes in his pocket and produces a card holder, leather, gold corners. He pauses. Instead of handing over a card, he pulls a cocktail napkin from the dispenser and writes in a clean, careful hand. Your name, he asks. Darius Johnson. The man repeats it, rolling the syllables like he wants to see which parts shine. He writes it down and folds the napkin once, twice, tucks it in his coat pocket like a document. Henry Vale, he says finally, and the name lands heavy and gilded. This is my wife, Margaret. Nice to meet you, Darius says, and the words feel both truthful and crooked at the same time. Pete's on his way. Sandy announces breathlessly from the phone by the register. Says he'll be here in 15. Dale clicks his tongue at the counter. Guess charity runs in their DNA after all. He mutters, not kid enough. And Ray's laugh sticks to the tiles like gum. Sandy stares at them until they find interest in their coffee. When the tow truck arrives, the old man's posture shifts in the doorlight. He straightens without effort. He shakes rain off his cuffs, like it offended him. The mechanic, Pete, removes his cap and says, yes, sir. before anyone decides who's in charge. Darius's stomach turns over once, slow, like the diner's floor moved an inch to the left without telling him. At the door, Henry looks back, something like a benediction cutting his face clean. "You've given us more than a meal, son," he says. "We don't forget kindness." He claps a hand on Darius's shoulder. The palm is warm, heavy, with a strength that doesn't need to prove itself. Then he's gone into the wet and the wind, and the Mercedes that broke down starts on the first try. Darius sits at the counter where he meant to be a customer. His burger is gone. His seat remains. Sandy slides a new plate in front of him. Burger, fries, and, as if she were sneaking a laugh past grief, a slice of apple pie that glistens under the light. "I can't," he says. "You're not taking charity." She answers, "You're taking respect. Difference matters." Big Mike appears behind her, blocking half the light. Arms cross the way men cross their arms when they want to fold a feeling in. "Kid," he says, "that was class. Can't teach it." He leans in, lowers his voice. "Funny, though Pete says that car started like a dream. Like somebody just popped the battery cable loose and snapped it back on. Maybe it got wet." Darius offers, and the excuse sounds like a raincoat on a statue. "Maybe," Mike says, not believing, and not mad enough to care. He claps the counter. "Eat." Dale and Ray watch him put ketchup on the plate, as if it means something about all of them. "Guess even they can surprise you," Ray says to his spoon. Darius doesn't turn. He chews slow, tasting salt and metal, until the flavors part and leave room for breath. He finishes the pie because Miss Ruby would say waste is uglier than hunger. He wipes his mouth on a paper napkin and stares at the stain it keeps, darkening from pink to brown, like a time-lapse of shame. He folds the napkin and slides it into his pocket, a quiet trophy from a moment he didn't plan. Outside, the rain loosens its grip. It falls regular, human. He steps into it with his jacket held high and lets the cold needle his neck. Elm Street slouches ahead, black as a bruise but warm in the windows. He passes the abandoned mall, a dead whale of a building stranded and sad, the kind of wasted promise that makes a kid imagine blueprints when he should be thinking about sleep. He cuts across the lot of the Granite Laundry, where the sign lost 2 letters sometime in June, and no one could afford to replace them. A cruiser slows as it rolls past the lazy way. Some men look at strangers in a neighborhood that belongs to them on paper. The officer's window drops. "You working out here?" the cop asks, flashlight already up. "Coming from Murphy's, sire," Darius says, hands visible. Shoulders rounded, the shape you make when you hope the world will pass its hand over you and keep moving. He is polite because Miss Ruby taught him the math of staying alive. The light lingers on his face. Then it's gone. The cruiser coasts forward. Tires hiss. Darius exhales, keeps walking, counts his breaths like beads. Home, a small square house with a porch that remembers better days and keeps sagging anyway. The yellow paint has molted to newspaper. A strip of duct tape persuades a window to cooperate with winter. He taps his shoes on the stoop and listens. Inside, the TV murmurs and the oxygen machine hums. The duet he grew up to. Miss Ruby is awake in her recliner, blue light draped over her cheekbones like a shawl. The tubes whisper against her nostrils. On the table beside her, pill bottles, lined like tiny dominoes. A church program folded into a triangle. His mother's coin, a tarnished quarter with a scratch through the eagle that he rubs like a worry stone when the world gets mouthy. "You're late, baby," she says, voice thin and full of authority anyway. "Work ran long," he says. Then, because lying at home is like breaking something he can't afford to fix. He adds, I gave my dinner to some folks. They looked like they needed it more. Miss Ruby watches him the way old women who've seen it all still find a way to be surprised. Silver hair, she asks, blue eyes sharp enough to cut a lie clean. He blinks. Yeah. Why? Sometimes judgment comes dressed like trouble, she says, setting the remote down, the TV talking to no one. Sometimes trouble comes dressed like judgment. Either way, it wants to see who you are when no one's keeping score. They weren't angels, he says, smiling without teeth. Just people. She pats the arm of her chair for him to sit. He does, knees against the coffee table scarred by decades of plates and elbows. She reaches for his hands, flips them over, traces the raw lines along the knuckles with her thumb. This world likes to test you, baby, she says, especially boys who look like you. They want saints or statistics. In between is too complicated. He swallows. The rain thins to a metronome against the roof. He can smell the ointment she uses on her joints and the lemon cleaner. She trusts more than prayer. Eat enough, she asks. He nods. You bring me a lie, she asks, eyebrow up. He laughs. Sandy sans-pie. He pulls the wrapped slice from his coat like contraband, and Miss Ruby grins as if he brought her spring in a paper bag. He warms it in the microwave while she hums a hymn, the kind with a chorus built to fit around a life like hers. They eat at the little kitchen table. 2 forks, 1 plate. When they finish, she nudges the quarter across the table with her nail. For luck, she says. You gave me this when Mama died. He answers, you said luck's for people who don't believe. I said luck's for people who haven't seen the math. She corrects. But a good coin feels right in the palm when you're about to make a decision. He flips the quarter. It spins, clinks, falls, heads. He doesn't know what that means, but he likes the sound. Back in the living room, she pulls a knitted blanket to her chin and closes one eye, the other still studying him. You look taller tonight, she says. Maybe the rain stretched me out, or the choice did. She closes the other eye. Go to bed. Tomorrow needs you rested. He stands in the doorway of his room and looks at the bed he's had since he was 8, the one his mother saved for and never got to see, delivered because of a curve in a road and a truck driver who believed he was fine to keep going. He lies down without turning on the light and stares at the ceiling stain shaped like a country no one visits. In the dark, the napkin in his pocket rustles softly when he breathes the name Darius Johnson folded neat in a stranger's jacket across town. The name Darius Johnson, written on a diner napkin in a stranger's pocket, as if it were a contract. He thinks of Henry's hand on his shoulder, warm like a promise, heavy like a test. His phone buzzes on the crate he uses for a nightstand. Jerome heard you bought dinner for some rain-soaked retirees. You saint. A second later, you still walking home like a movie martyr. He smiles and thumbs back, a reply he won't send. Sometimes you buy a meal to tell yourself you still can. He rolls the coin across his knuckles the way magicians roll secrets. The house settles with a sigh, and somewhere far away, a Mercedes whispers down an empty road toward a hotel where old money sleeps in new sheets. 3 calls are coming in the morning to a principal, to a lawyer, to an assistant who keeps confidence for a living. They will use his name like a key, and doors will open that have never learned to open for boys from Elm Street without someone else's hand on the knob. But tonight is just the sound of rain easing off a roof, patched with duct tape and memory. The last thing he thinks before sleep finds him is the question he hasn't been asked yet. Why'd you do it? Darius. Because I was hungry. because they looked cold. Because somewhere a person I'll never meet gave my grandmother a seat on a bus she wasn't supposed to have, or a job she wasn't supposed to keep, or the benefit of the doubt nobody could afford. Because the world keeps studying my face for answers, I don't owe it. Because I am not the study. I am the one who eats last and still shares. He sleeps, and the question waits in the doorway like weather. The rain fades to a memory outside, and inside the house on Elm Street, a boy who gave away his first hot dinner in 3 days breathes even and deep, unaware he has just rewritten a future that thought it already knew him. The rain has turned mean. It doesn't fall anymore, it lashes, slicing through the night like punishment. Murphy's Diner hums under its flickering neon sign, the word open sputtering red like a heartbeat on life support. Inside, the dinner rush thins to ghosts, half-empty mugs, checkbooks waiting for signatures, and tired faces pretending not to notice the dishwasher who never stops moving. Darius scrubs the last plate. His reflection stares back at him in the metal sink, blurred, brown, and bone-tired. 3 days of saving for one meal. His meal, he checks the clock, 9:42 p.m. Big Mike has already locked the back door for the night. The smell of fryer grease clings to his clothes like memory. He wipes his hands on a towel, his stomach loud enough to make Sandy glance up from refilling coffee. "You finally gonna eat like a customer tonight?" she teases, smiling just enough to hide her pity. "Yeah," he says softly, "saved for it." She grins. "Get the burger, kid. Fries on me." Darius thanks her, though he knows she'll still have to log it in the register. Rules are rules when money's thin. He sits at the counter, for once not behind it. It feels wrong, like trespassing. The stool wobbles beneath him, the chrome edge biting into his thigh. He breathes. Tonight, he promised himself, is for small victories. Then the door opens. The bell above it gives a half-hearted ring, drowned by thunder. A gust of wet air and cold follows 2 silhouettes inside. An elderly white couple, dripping, shivering. The man's gray suit is soaked straight through. The woman's hair, silver and perfect, even under the rain, now clings to her cheeks. They don't look like they belong here. Murphy's isn't the kind of place where people wear designer coats. Sandy hesitates, then forces her voice cheerful. "Evening, folks. Sit wherever you like." They choose the corner booth table 6, the one couple's reserved for anniversaries and birthdays. Darius watches them through the reflection in the counter's chrome. They speak quietly, the man gesturing toward his pockets, the woman rifling through her purse again and again. No wallet. Sandy brings 2 coffees. The woman's hand trembles as she reaches for the cup. The man tries to smile, fails. "I'm sorry," she whispers to Sandy, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "We seem to have misplaced our wallet." The diner goes quiet in that particular way. Poor places go quiet when someone else's misfortune feels contagious. Darius looks away, but he can still hear them. "Maybe we can leave something," the man says. "My watch. Her papers." Big Mike appears from the kitchen, arms crossed, apron splattered. He looks at them, then at Sandy. "You know the policy." "Come on, Mike," Sandy says, voice low. "They're old. Look at them." I said policy. "No exceptions." His tone ends the conversation. To Mike, it's math. Food costs money. Sympatha doesn't pay bills. The couple nods, humiliated. The man gathers his things. The woman clutches her leather portfolio to her chest like a shield. They move toward the door. Something in Darius stirs. Maybe hunger, maybe conscience. He looks down at the burger in front of him, the one he worked 3 nights for. Steam curls off it. A quiet invitation. They're almost gone when he stands. "Wait," he says, Every head turns. The sound of rain fills the silence between words. Darius swallows hard. His voice shakes, but he doesn't back down. They can have mine. The woman blinks. Oh, sweetheart, no. We couldn't. Please, Darius says. I want to. Mike sighs. Kid, I'll pay for it. Something in his tone makes Mike stop arguing. Sandy's eyes soften. She slides the untouched plate toward the couple. Sit. Darius says quietly, you shouldn't be out there. The couple hesitates, then returns to the booth. The man's name is Harold. The woman, Margaret. Their voices are cultured, measured, deliberate, the kind that usually order at country clubs, not diners. Thank you, Harold says, shaking Darius's hand. You're very kind. It's just dinner, Darius says. No big deal. Harold studies him with eyes the color of steel under water. You work here, after school, and weekends, saving for something, college. Maybe. He shrugs. If I can swing it, Margaret leans forward. That's admirable. Her voice sounds sincere, but her gaze is sharp, assessing. Darius doesn't notice the way her fingers tighten on the portfolio, the faint gold emblem on its surface glinting when lightning flashes. Sandy brings fresh coffee. Harold reaches for his cup, but stops. You said college. What do you want to study? Business. I want to fix things around here. Jobs, housing, clinics. Margaret tilts her hill. You sound like a reformer. Or a dreamer. Darius says with a grin. Depends who you ask. Harold laughs softly, but there's something unsettling beneath it. You'd be surprised how rare that kind of thinking is. He says, outside. The rain turns violent again, smearing the diner's windows with silver streaks. In the reflection, Darius catches sight of his own face beside theirs, a boy beside royalty. The difference is so stark, it hurts. Pete's tow truck pulls into the parking lot 20 minutes later. The couple stands to leave. Harold's handshake lingers longer than necessary. His eyes search Darius's face like he's reading something written there. You've given us something valuable tonight, he says. Just food. Darius replies. Character. Harold corrects. The kind that can't be bought. The words hang between them heavy. Strange. Margaret presses a folded napkin into Darius's hand. Our number, she says, in case you ever need guidance. He doesn't notice that her handwriting looks too deliberate, too practiced. They disappear into the storm. The diner exhales once they're gone. Sandy shakes her head. Honey, I've seen all kinds in here. Never one like that. Mike appears, holding another plate, a burger, fries, and a slice of apple pie. Eat, kid. On the house, Darius blinks. You sure? You paid already? Mike says, twice. Sandy leans closer. Strange, though. Pete said their car started fine, like the battery was never dead. Darius frowns. Maybe it was loose. Maybe, she says, unconvinced. The walk home is long. Rain has thinned to mist, the kind that seeps into clothes and bone. Streetlights flicker over cracked sidewalks and puddles, reflecting broken neon. Every window Darius passes glows, warm families, eating, laughing, living. He tightens his jacket around him, the napkin still folded in his pocket. Home smells like Vicks and bleach. Miss Ruby sits in her recliner, oxygen machine, humming like a mechanical lullaby. Her Bible rests on the armrest, open to Proverbs. You're late, she says, voice raspy. Work ran long. She studies him. And your dinner? He smiles faintly. Gave it away. Miss Ruby sighs, half proud, half worried. Baby, kindness don't fill stomachs. I'm full, he says. I think. Her eyes soften. You've got your mama's heart. That's a dangerous thing in a hard world. He sits beside her, the old couch sighing under their combined weight. On TV, the news, shows a charity gala, uptown wealthy donors, champagne, cameras, people who could change lives with one check, but never come to this side of town. Grandma, says quietly, you ever wonder why people like them got so much, and people like us got enough to test our faith? She finishes, every day. They fall into silence. Outside, sirens wail in the distance. Then fada. Hours later, Darius lies awake staring at the ceiling. Rainwater taps against the window, like someone knocking from the other side of the world. He pulls the napkin from his pocket, unfolds it, his name written in elegant cursive Darius Johnson. Below it, a phone number, and a symbol embossed faintly in gold. It looks official, familiar. He flips it over. On the back, a faint watermark W. F. He has no idea what it means, but somewhere, deep down, he senses something shifting, like the air before lightning, miles away. In a suite overlooking downtown, Harold Whitmore watches the rain through floor-to-ceiling glass. His coat, dry now, hangs neatly beside the minibar. Margaret sits at a table, reviewing a folder thick with documents. Well, she asks, do you think he's the one? Harold doesn't answer immediately. He lifts a crystal tumbler, the ice clinking like punctuation. He didn't hesitate. He says, finally, didn't ask for anything in return, just gave. Margaret adjusts her glasses, scanning the notes. Grades, community work, spotless reputation. The teachers adore him. Of course they do, Harold says, but charity can be rehearsed. We needed authenticity. And you believe we saw it. I believe we provoked it. His reflection in the glass looks older, colder. Now we find out if it's sustainable. He turns toward the table. On top of the folder, a photo Darius, mid-smile, apron-stained, eyes tired but unbroken. Next to it, a report labeled Candidate 47 B Community Potential Index. Margaret flips a page, and the others? Not ready, Harold says. Too performative, too self-interested. This one, he's different. She nods slowly. We'll see what the background checks say. Harold's gaze drifts back to the window. Character is like glass. He murmurs, you test its strength by tapping. If it cracks, you walk away. Lightning splits the skyline. In the reflection, the city flickers like a map of opportunity and control. Back on Elm Street, Miss Ruby murmurs in her sleep. Darius tiptoes to her room, adjusts her blanket, turns off the oxygen tank light. The hum fades. The house sinks into silence. He stands at the window, watching the rain fade into fog. Across the street, a billboard catches his eye. An ad for the Whitmore Foundation building tomorrow's leaders. The logo glints gold, the same emblem from the napkin. His breath catches. The world suddenly feels smaller and more dangerous. Morning breaks late on Elm Street. The clouds haven't moved. They just turned gray to tired white, the color of a city trying to forgive itself. Darius wakes to the hum of Miss Ruby's oxygen machine, but this time the sound grates. It's not rhythm, it's reminder. He sits up. The napkin from last night lies on his nightstand beside the scratched coin. The gold emblem catches the light, like an eye watching him back. Outside, the neighborhood moves slow garbage trucks, school buses, and people pretending they're not late. Darius tucks the napkin into his backpack, ties his shoe, and steps into the morning that already looks suspicious of him. Elm Street smells of rain and diesel. At the corner, a squad car idles. Two officers inside sip coffee, eyes hidden behind reflective lenses. Darius nods politely. One of them nods back. The other doesn't. He can't tell which one matters. Halfway to Roosevelt High, a billboard for the Whitmore Foundation towers over the cracked sidewalk. Building tomorrow's leaders. Same crest. Same gold letters. His stomach tightens. A passing delivery driver honks. Yo, dish boy, you famous yet? He doesn't answer. He's used to the teasing, but this morning it sticks. Roosevelt High smells like pencil shavings and floor wax. The same every day. But the whispers start before first period. Yo, D. That the kid from Murphy's, yeah, the one who fed them old white folks. Man, saw it on TikTok, Sandy posted it. He freezes. What? Jerome appears beside him, phone in hand, eyes wide with a mix of pride and panic. Bro, you trending. Look. On the screen, a blurry clip from the diner's security camera, filmed off a monitor, Darius handing his burger to the couple. Caption: local teen gives up meal to stranded elders, kindness, Murphy's Diner. Comments flood below. Good kid. Raised right. Would he still help if they were black though? Probably staged. They love making us look desperate for white approval. He feels the blood drain from his face. Fame without consent feels like a crime scene. Who posted this? He asks. Sandy said her niece saw it on the diner's page. Then it blew up. Some church blog picked it up. Then the local news. Darius closes his eyes. Great. Jerome grins. Nah, man, this is good. People love you. Check this out. Someone started a GoFundMe, send Darius to college. You got $800 overnight. The hallway buzzes around him. Phones raised like torches. Every smile feels like inspection. Every compliment sounds rehearsed. He whispers, "They don't even know me." Jerome nudges him. Now they do. By lunch, a reporter from Channel 7 waits outside the school gates. She's young, bright smile, microphone branded with blue and white. Are you Darius Johnson, the boy from the diner? Man, I'm late for class, he mutters. Just 30 seconds. She insists. How does it feel to be a symbol of generosity in a divided community? He stops. A symbol of what? Unity. She says quickly. Hope. Proof that kindness transcends color. The phrase lands wrong like praise that erases the person it's aimed at. I wasn't thinking about color, he says. They were hungry. She smiles wider, as if he's reading from her script. Beautiful. We'll run that tonight. Click. Camera off. Story done. Narrative stolen. By evening, Murphy's Diner has more customers than it can handle. The same people who ignored it now flood in for selfies under the neon sign. Big Mike shakes his head. Press called twice already. Said they want to film here tomorrow. You better wear that clean apron. Kid. Sandy rolls her eyes. Let them film Mike scrubbing the grill. That's the real miracle. Darius slips into the back, stomach tight. I didn't ask for this. Mike wipes his hand. Nobody asks for lightning. You just hope it hits something that won't burn. As he heads out with the trash, voices drift from the alley. Dale and Ray again. The regulars from last night. Figures. Dale says, do one nice thing and they crown him Saint of Elm Street. Yeah. Ray replies, guess you gotta feed white folks to get on TV. They laugh. The sound scrapes. Darius keeps walking, jaw tight, trash bag swinging at his side like ballast. 2 nights later, everything breaks. He leaves the diner, late rain again. Same sharp smell of wet metal. The bus has stopped running, so he cuts through the old mall parking lot. He hums under his breath to fill the emptiness. Headlights flash. A cruiser rolls in. Slow. Lights flicker red and blue. Hey! A voice calls. Stop right there. Darius freezes. Hands instinctively visible. The officers step out, one white, one Latino. Guns holstered, but hands close. You fit the description. The white officer says, Tien Male. Dark hoodie. Loitering near closed property. I'm walking home from work. Darius says, breath clouding in the cold. From Murphy's Diner. ID. He reaches slowly into his pocket. The Latino officer shines a flashlight in his face. Too bright. Why you walking here? No buses. It's faster this way. Step away from your bag. It's just my uniform. Step away. He obeys. They unzip the bag apron. Towel. Half-empty bottle of soda. A napkin folded carefully inside. What's this? The white officer asks, holding it up. A note? From someone I helped. You helped them rob a store. He smirks. Something in Darius snaps. Quiet, but definite. You got jokes. Watch your tone. He breathes through his teeth. I'm not doing anything wrong. The Latino officer studies him a second longer, then says, let him go. He's clean. The other scoffs, but holsters the suspicion. You get home safe, kid. And try not to look guilty next time. They drive off. Tires. Spitting mud. Darius stands there until the red-blue fades. Then he laughs once. Bitter. Try not to look guilty, he repeats, like the world just gave him homework he'll never finish. The next morning, he wakes to chaos. On social media, a photo circulates him, standing under flashing police lights, eyes wide, hands raised. Someone filmed the stop from a passing car. The caption twists everything. Local teen hero caught trespassing after viral stunt. In an hour, Darius Johnson trends again for the wrong reasons. Comments flip like a coin. Another fake hero exposed. They always show their true colors. Cops doing their job, kid shoulda stayed humble. Sandy calls first. Baby, don't read the comments. Miss Ruby hears next. She sits him down at the kitchen table. News playing in the background. The anchor's voice smooth as ice. The same teen praised for generosity last week was briefly detained last night after being found on private property. Private property, she mutters. Since when sidewalks belong to anybody? Darius rubs his eyes. It doesn't matter. They see what they want to see. Miss Ruby grips his wrist, frail but fierce. Then show them different, again and again, till they choke on their own doubt. He shakes his head. I'm tired. Grandma, I'm tired of proving I'm not the story they wrote. She leans back, breathing shallow. Baby, you don't prove it for them. You prove it so you can look in the mirror without hating what they see. Across town, in the Whitmore Foundation's boardroom, the same footage plays on a giant screen, grainy, shaky, lit by police lights. Margaret pauses it. This could ruin him. Harold studies the still image, or reveal him. She frowns. You call this a test? Every leader we've ever backed has faced one, he says. Adversity exposes character. Adversity, she snaps. He was profiled. Harold's silence is sharp enough to cut the air. Exactly. He turns off the screen. If he folds, we were wrong. If he rises, he's the one. At school, whispers turn again. Some teachers look away in the hallway. One pats him on the shoulder like condolence. Only misses. Patterson meets his eyes straight. They called me this morning, she says. Reporters asked if you were a troublemaker with potential. I told them you were potential. Period. He swallows hard. Thanks. She nods. The trick to surviving this world, Darius, is understanding that perception is a weapon. Sometimes you just have to outlive the lie. That evening, he sits on the porch steps, rain tapering into mist again. The napkin lies unfolded on his lap. The ink has bled a little, but the number remains legible. He could call it. He could find out what this all means. He doesn't, not yet. Across the street, children play under the single working streetlight, their laughter bouncing off wet pavement. It sounds like hope refusing curfew. Miss Ruby opens the door behind him. You thinking of running or fighting? He smiles faintly, maybe just breathing. She lowers herself onto the step beside him, joints creaking. Breathing's good. But remember, every breath's a choice, too. In the distance, Sirène Fade, the billboard for the Whitmore Foundation, gleams faintly through the fog. A car passe, headlights sweeping across his face. For a second, he sees himself reflected in the window glass, half boy, half myth. He mutters to no one. They turned me into something I'm not. From behind the glass of a black sedan parked half a block away, a lens glints, someone watching, documenting. A voice over a radio crackles. Subject remains consistent. No aggression. Proceed to phase 2. The sedan drives off silently. The Monday after the arrest video hit the local news, Darius woke to voices outside his window. Two neighbors were arguing about whether he'd talked back to the cop or just stood there. Every retelling stretched the truth thinner. By breakfast, the story wasn't about a boy walking home from work. It was about another black kid with an attitude. Murphy's Diner had already seen the footage looped on the TV by the counter. Big Mike turned the volume down when Darius walked in, but the silence said enough. Even Sandy couldn't meet his eyes for a beat too long. "Town wants a hearing," she murmured while pouring his coffee. "They call it a community forum. You know what that means?" Darius didn't answer. He did. It meant a public trial with microphones instead of gavels. By noon, flyers were stapled to every utility pole from Elm Street to the courthouse. Community Safety Forum, Youth Conduct, Police Relations, and Public Trust. Tuesday, 6 p.m. Roosevelt High Gymnasium. Sponsored by Councilwoman Linda Thorne and the Roosevelt Business Association. The photo beneath the title wasn't even his face, just the back of a black teenager's head under flashing lights. At school, whispers followed him down the hallway. A few students patted his shoulder like it was a funeral. Others stared like they were watching a cautionary tale unfold in real time. Mrs. Patterson cornered him after English class. "You don't have to speak," she said softly. "They'll chew you up if you're not ready." "I don't want to hide either," he replied. His voice sounded older than 17. At home that evening, Miss Ruby sat by the window folding laundry she couldn't quite see. Her oxygen tank hissed rhythmically. "They just want a show, baby," she said. "A crowd needs someone to clap for or throw stones at. Make sure you know which one you are." Darius nodded, but inside, something solidified like steel cooling in water. Tuesday night, the Roosevelt High Gym smelled like waxed floors and tension. Folding chairs stretched in uneven rows. Reporters from the local channel lined the walls. A podium stood at half-court under the flickering banner, "Safety for Our Children." The crowd divided itself without instructions. Uptown business owners in suits on the right. Elm Street residents, mostly black and brown, on the left. Police officers leaned against the bleachers, hands crossed, watching like guard. Councilwoman Linda Thorne entered last, heels clicking sharp against the wood. She smiled the way politicians do when they're about to perform empathy. Her pale blue suit glowed under the gym lights. Even her clipboard looked rehearsed. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "Tonight, we discuss community safety and how incidents like the one last week reflect on our city's future." The projector behind her froze on a still frame, Darius's face, half lit by police cruiser headlights. Applause from one side, murmurs from the other. One by one, townspeople took the microphone. A man in a golf jacket spoke first. "My wife can't walk our dog without locking the gate twice. Maybe if these kids learned respect, we wouldn't need so many patrols." A woman followed, clutching her purse like a relic. "It's not about color," she insisted. "It's about behavior." Each statement felt like a paper cut. Small, but it built to bleeding. When Sandy's name was called, she marched up in her diner apron. Her voice shook at first but gathered force. "That boy works double shifts, washing dishes to feed his grandma," she said. You want safety. Try paying attention to who's actually holding this town together. The audience split, half clapping, half muttering. The police chief cleared his throat into the mic. We conducted a standard stop. He said, "The suspect, excuse me." The young man matched a description. Procedure was followed. Procedure. The word landed like an iron lid, closing. Councilwoman Thorne adjusted her pearl necklace. "Mr. Johnson, would you like to address the community?" Every eye pivoted toward him. Even the camera light burned white on his skin. For a heartbeat, he thought about walking out. But then he saw Miss Ruby's worn cardigan in the front row, her hands folded tight in her lap. Darius walked to the podium. The microphone popped as he spoke. "My name is Darius Johnson. I work at Murphy's Diner after school. That night, I was walking home because my bus card was empty." Laughter short, brittle from the uptown side. It continued. "The officer told me to put my hands where he could see them. So I did. Then he asked what I was doing out so late. I said I was coming from work." He paused. "I guess I didn't look like someone who just washed dishes for 8 hours." A hush spread. Even the reporters stopped typing. "You want to talk about safety." Darius's voice grew steadier. "Try walking home in a neighborhood that looks at you like you're the threat. Try being seen but never known." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his grandmother's silver coin, dull and worn. "My grandma says this coin's lucky, not because it brings money, but because it reminds her to keep her dignity shiny when the world tries to tarnish it." He placed it on the podium. "That's what I'm trying to do. Keep it shiny." Applause started small from the back, from Elm Street, and rolled forward like a slow tide. The councilwoman tapped her pen, pretending to check her notes. When the forum adjourned, people spilled into the hallway, still buzzing with argument. "That boy's got poise," someone muttered. Another voice shot back. "Poise don't pay for damages when crime hits." By the exit, a TV reporter blocked Darius's path. "Mr. Johnson, do you feel you were profiled because of your race?" The question sliced through the air. Darius looked straight into the lens. "I feel like people see what they expect to see. No anger, just exhaustion refined into truth." The cameraman lowered his rig first. Two figures waited near the doors, an older couple standing apart from the noise. The man's posture was ramrod straight, his hair silver under the hallway lights. The woman beside him carried a leather portfolio tucked close to her chest. "Mr. Johnson," the man said. His voice held a calm authority that made people step aside. "I'm Harold Vale. This is my wife, Margaret. Evening. Seer." Darius extended a hand automatically. His palm was still damp with sweat. "We watched your remark," Margaret said, smiling. "Impressive composure for someone your age." Harold nodded. "Composure under scrutiny reveals more than any resume." He reached into his coat and produced a cream envelope embossed with gold lettering. "Our foundation is hosting a private discussion on community development. We'd like you to join us. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Grandview Hotel, Suite 17 Amperes." Darius stared at the paper like it was a magic trick. "What kind of discussion?" he asked cautiously. "Opportunity," Harold replied, "the kind that doesn't come twice." Before he could respond, they melted into the departing crowd. Two shadows swallowed by flashbulbs and chatter. The rain began just as he stepped outside, the kind that fell straight down quiet, cleansing. Reporters packed up their vans. Police cruisers idled like beasts, waiting for orders. Mrs. Patterson appeared beside him, umbrella trembling. "You held your ground," she said. "That's what real courage looks like." "Did it change anything?" he asked. "Change doesn't always clap. Sometimes it just listens." He walked home alone. The streetlights hummed above wet asphalt. Every puddle reflected the gymnasium's glow fading behind him. Miss Ruby was awake when he got in, watching the rerun on Channel 7. Her face, half lit by the TV, was unreadable. "You spoke fine," she said without turning, spoke truth. "They twisted it anyway," he muttered. One pundit had already called him articulate for his background. Miss Ruby snorted softly. "Baby, they finally saw you stand up. But watch who claps. Not all hands mean praise." He sat on the couch beside her. The envelope still felt heavy in his jacket pocket. "Someone invited me to a meeting tomorrow," he said. "What kind of someone?" "An old couple said they run a foundation." Her eyes narrowed. Foundations don't knock on Elm Street without wanting something back. He looked down at his hands still rough from dish soap, trembling slightly. "What if it's real?" he whispered. Miss Ruby reached over and closed his fingers around the envelope. "Then you walk in proud. But remember, baby, charity wears perfume, but power smells like ink and signatures." That night, Darius couldn't sleep. He replayed every face from the hearing, the cop's blank stare, Thorne's polite smirk, Sandy's trembling defiance. He thought about the silver coin on the podium, still lying there when the janitor swept the gym. Rain drummed against the roof, like fingers tapping a decision he hadn't yet made. He opened the envelope. Inside was a single card on thick paper stock. "Whitmore Foundation, Community Partnership Initiative." Below it, in elegant script, candidate Darius L. Johnson. His pulse quickened. He flipped it over. On the back, one sentence written in black ink. "True change begins with those who choose kindness when no one's watching." He recognized the handwriting, sharp, deliberate. Harold Vales. Outside, thunder rolled far off toward the river, as if the storm itself was shifting sides. In the kitchen, Miss Ruby hummed softly to herself, the tune blending with the rain. She looked up when he entered, barefoot and restless. "You thinking what I think you're thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking maybe it's time somebody from Elm Street sat at their table," he said. She smiled faintly. "Then don't forget who built your chair." He nodded, slipping the invitation into his backpack next to his math notebook. The storm had calmed, but the air still crackled, charged, waiting. Tomorrow, he'd walk into a world built on contracts and cameras. Tonight, he let the rain cool his skin and whispered to the dark, "Keep it shiny." The coin in his pocket felt warm, like a promise paid forward. The marble floor gleamed like water under glass. The Grandview Hotel always smelled expensive polished citrus, ozone, and something faintly metallic, like air shipped in from another country. Darius stood in the lobby, clutching a folder that still felt unreal, eyes drawn upward to the chandelier that shimmered like falling rain. Around him, briefcases clicked, heels whispered, and not a single face looked like his. The concierge eyed his thrift store jacket, deliveries around back. He said automatically, "I'm here for Mr. Vale." Darius answered, voice steady, a flicker of confusion, then discomfort. "Of course, Seer. Suite 17 ah." The man signaled a guard to escort him to the elevator anyway, politeness wrapped around suspicion. The guard's badge read security consultant, but his stance said chaperone. Darius pressed the button himself, watched the mirrored doors slide shut. For a moment his own reflection multiplied 10 Darius Johnsons boxed in gold trim, each one holding a different version of the same future. He touched the coin in his pocket, Miss Ruby's Keep It Shiny coin, and took a long breath. Two guests in suits whispered behind him, "That's the diner kid. PR gold if he doesn't slip. Hope he learned which fork to use." The words hit, but he didn't flinch. He just watched the numbers climb. 7, 9, 14. He'd been tested before by poverty, by silence, by people who thought kindness meant weakness. This was just another exam. The doors opened onto a hallway lined with abstract art. Soft jazz seeped from hidden speakers. Even the carpet felt quiet. Petra Sloan, the foundation's PR director, opened the door. Her smile was quick and precise, like a flashbulb. Darius, so good you could make it. We're informal here. She motioned him inside. Nothing in the suite was informal. The air hummed at a constant, expensive temperature. Coffee steamed from a silver pot. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city below, like a stock photo of success. Harold Vale sat near the glass. Posture perfect. Margaret occupied the couch, her elegance as deliberate as a signature. Beside them, Victor Ames, the Foundation's CFO, clicked a pen without writing anything. Petra set a recorder on the coffee table. Just notes, she said. Darius nodded, but clocked the red light anyway. Let's begin, Harold said smoothly. Think of this as a conversation, not an interview. Harold slid 3 single pages toward him. Real-world dilemmas, he explained. We like to understand how a person thinks under pressure. Darius read quickly. Accept a large anonymous donation from a known slumlord if it funds a children's clinic. Dismiss a beloved youth mentor to save the program's budget. Partner publicly with a politician who once cut school lunch funding but now promises zoning approvals. He looked up. You want honesty or optics? Harold's smile tilted. They're rarely the same. Darius tapped the first page. You take the donation but disclose the source. If the money's dirty, transparency's soap. Petra's pen paused mid-stroke. He moved to the next. Keep the mentor. Restructure the program. People aren't replaceable line items. And the third, never trade food for photo ops. If a politician wants redemption, let them fund scholarships quietly. Let action apologize. Silence stretched. Victor's pen stopped clicking. Finally, Harold nodded once. Not bad. Son, you think like an operator. I think like someone who's been operated on, Darius said. Petra's eyes flicked up. She almost smiled. A hotel runner entered balancing another tray of coffee. He looked at everyone except Darius. Excuse me, sire, he told Harold. Did you need me to remove him's cup? Darius turned his head slowly. I can answer for myself, he said evenly. And yes, I'd like sugar. The runner froze, murmured an apology, and fled. Harold's expression didn't change, but his eyes recorded everything. Margaret finally spoke. You handled that with grace. Darius shrugged. I'm used to people mistaking manners for permission. Victor produced a thick folder stamped confidential. Standard non-disclosure. He said, protects our assessment protocols. Darius flipped through it. Legal ink smelled the same as grease traps, stale and binding. Halfway down page 3, he stopped. Beneficiary agrees to participate in media aligned with Foundation messaging. He read aloud. So I'd be a mascot. Ambassador, Petra corrected. He met her chaza. Mascot with better lighting. Margaret started to interject, but Harold lifted a hand. Go on. I'll sign if 3 conditions go in writing. Darius said. First, a community advisory board with real votes. Second, 60% of the center's staff must come from the neighborhoods we serve. Third, he tapped the page, full transparency that the diner night was staged. No lies by omission. Victor's pen clicked again. You're in no position to negotiate. Then you're offering charity, not partnership, Darius said quietly. Harold's eyes narrowed in something like approval. Margaret opened a leather portfolio. Inside, architectural renderings gleamed under the suite's light. A transformed Riverside Mall, reborn as the Elm District Community Development Center, glass, wood, gardens, hope drawn in ink. We call it the Beacon, she said. scholarship, internship, then assistant director track. Within 3 years director, if earned how? Darius asked. Impact. Harold said. Graduations. Jobs created. Lives changed. He traced a line across the blueprint. We build the scaffolding. You, the soul. It should have felt like triumph. Instead, the room smelled faintly of chlorine, like something sterilized. Petra cleared her throat. Before you decide, you should know Councilwoman Thorne wants her nephew installed as director. She's leveraging zoning approvals. Victor's pen stilled. Petra, he deserves the truth, she said sharply. She'll use him as a puppet for ribbon cuttings. Harold folded his hands. We want you because you're authentic. She wants a mascot she can manage. So that was the real fight, integrity versus machinery. Darius could already feel the gears turning. Then put safeguards in writing. Darius said, no political endorsements, a public dashboard of outcome, and whistleblower protection for staff. Victor scoffed. You think this is Congress? I think it's my community, Darius said, and transparency's cheaper than scandal. Harold's mouth twitched almost pride. You've got the instincts of a man twice your age. People age fast where I'm from. Harold leaned forward. One more thing. If we put your face on this, you'll catch more than praise. You'll catch bullets with your name on them, verbal, maybe legal. When the smear comes, do you run or report? Darius met his gaze. I owed it. And I keep receipts. Petra exhaled softly, almost admiration. He speaks systems. Margaret studied him like a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Character under pressure, she murmured, still holding a knock. A security manager whispered through the crack, Apologies. Seer, there's a delivery bike blocking the private lane. Victor waved dismissively. Tow it. Darius froze. What kind of bike? Rusty blue. Stickers all over. Jerome. He stood, chair legs scraping marble. That's mine. My friend dropped something for me. The manager frowned. Guests from Elm Street aren't permitted upstairs. Then consider him invited, Darius said, stepping into the hallway. Jerome stood by the service elevator, backpack dripping rain. You left this, he said, handing over Miss Ruby's spare inhaler and a folded note. Keep breathing. Proud of you. A guard moved to escort him out. Darius stopped him. He's my guess. Harold appeared in the doorway. Watching. He said nothing, but his expression said field leadership noted. Back inside, Harold set a heavy fountain pen and a silver lighter on the table. Ink for commitment, he said. Flame for the bridges you may need to burn. Darius stared at the contract. If I sign, what am I giving up? Privacy, Victor said. Some freedom of speech. Or protection, Margaret added softly, depending on perspective. Protection from who? Petra hesitated. People who don't like change, or success in the wrong color. The words landed like glass breaking. Darius looked out the window. The city glowed indifferent below. Harold leaned back. You want to rebuild a community. You'll have to survive it first. Petra's phone buzzed. Her face drained. Oh. No. What is it? Margaret asked. She turned the screen. A photo filled it. Murphy's Diner. Windows shattered. Spray paint dripping red. Token in slanted letters. Below, Big Mike clutching his forehead. Blood streaking down his temple. Police tape flapping in the rain. They think he called the media, Petra whispered. Someone posted. He sold out to the white millionaires. It's already trending. Darius felt his chest tighten. He saw the booth, the smell of grease and coffee, the laughter of Sandy's voice. Now it was chaos. And his name was attached. Harold folded his hands calmly. This is the cost of visibility. Son, the moment you step into light, someone will try to blind you. Margaret reached across the table, voice low. If you want the tools to protect what you love, sign. If you want to stay clean, walk. Darius's pulse roared in his ears. He saw Miss Ruby coughing by her oxygen tank. He saw Jerome's bike chained outside the diner. He saw glass, always glass, breaking in both directions. He pocketed the coin, picked up the pen. Then he set it down. "I don't sign deals while my people bleed," he said. He grabbed the rolled blueprints and ran for the elevator. Behind him, voices called his name. The recorder still blinking red. The elevator doors slid shut. His reflection fractured again. 10 Darius Johnsons overlapping, all breathing the same storm air. Below, rain hammered the glass walls like a countdown. If you can't clean the system, he thought, make it glass. And the elevator dropped. 3 weeks later, the glass of Murphy's diner had been replaced, but the crack in the town had not. The word token still ghosted through the cleaned windows when the morning light hit just right, like shame that refused to fade. Across Elm Street, news fans idled, satellite dishes, turning slowly toward the latest headline. They weren't here for the diner anymore. They were here for him. A handwritten sign hung on the door of Roosevelt's Community Hall. Public hearing the Darius Johnson incident. Community reactions and use of philanthropic influence. He'd stopped reading after that. When institutions didn't know what to call something, they called it a hearing. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, rain-damp coats, and resentment. Folding chairs again, same kind they'd used for the safety forum, but this time the cameras were bigger, the stakes higher. On stage sat 6 people behind a long table. Councilwoman Thorne, face lacquered in civic righteousness. Harold Vale, Immaculata Xavier. Petra Sloan, tablet in hand, eyes sharp and tired. Victor Ames, CFO, pretending to take notes. Reverend Booker, local pastor and moral voice of Elm Street. And in the middle, a nameplate that read, Darius Johnson, in bold type. The irony wasn't lost on him, his name finally engraved, but only for judgment. Reporters whispered. The crowd split again along invisible lines. Donors in silk on the right, neighborhood workers and students on the left. Miss Ruby sat in the front row, hand clutching her cane like a scepter. Beside her, Big Mike wore a bandage and defiance. Jerome filmed quietly from his phone. Half proud, half terrified, Thorne leaned into her microphone, voice sweet as a knife's edge. "Good evening. We're here to discuss recent events surrounding Mr. Darius Johnson, a local youth whose actions, both admirable and controversial, have drawn national attention." She turned a practiced smile toward the cameras. "This is not a trial, merely a dialogue about accountability and influence." Darius almost laughed. Dialogue was what people called it when they didn't want to say interrogation. Thorne continued. 3 weeks ago, following an act of vandalism at Murphy's Diner, Mr. Johnson met privately with representatives of the Whitmore Foundation. Since then, questions have arisen about the foundation's intentions and Mr. Johnson's role as a community spokesperson. She gestured toward him. "Mr. Johnson, the floor is yours." He stood slowly, the microphone squealing once before quieting. 3 weeks ago, someone broke windows at the diner where I work. They called me a sellout for talking to people who offered to help rebuild this neighborhood, the same people who used to cross the street when they saw me coming. He paused. "So, yeah, I met them." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I didn't go there for money," he continued. "I went to see if their talk about partnership meant anything. Because if it did, maybe we'd finally get a clinic where folks don't have to ride 2 buses for a checkup. Maybe kids at Roosevelt High would have working computers again." He looked toward Thorne. "And if it didn't, at least I'd know which promises were empty." For a heartbeat, the gym was silent except for the rain ticking against the high windows. Then Thorne's smile, spoken like a young man with ambition. but ambition can be dangerous without guidance. Victor Ames leaned toward his mic. Mr. Johnson, would you care to explain why you refused to sign the partnership contract offered by our foundation? Because it wasn't partnership, Darius said. It was control. You turned down full scholarship, salary, and national visibility. Victor pressed. Then you accuse us of manipulation. Sounds ungrateful. From the audience, someone shouted, "He's right." Another voice snapped back, "He's biting the hand that feeds him." Thorne's gavel cracked. Order. Petra watched, silent. Her eyes flickered between Darius and Harold. Finally, Harold Vale spoke, voice calm and deliberate. "Mr. Johnson, you misunderstand our intent. We never sought control, only stewardship. Our methods are data-driven. If certain assessments were misunderstood, that is regrettable." Darius stared at him. "Assessments? You mean the diner setup?" A ripple of gasps. Cameras zoomed in. Thorne seized the opening. "Are you admitting the foundation staged that incident?" Harold's expression didn't change. "We evaluated character under real conditions." Reverend Booker's hand slammed the table. "You played God with a boy's life, tested him like an experiment because of where he came from." Harold didn't blink, "and found him exceptional." "Exceptional isn't consent." Booker shot back. Miss Ruby's voice carried from the audience, sharp and clear. "My grandson don't need strangers dressing up like angels to test if he's got a heart." Applause broke out, half anger, half catharsis. Thorne tapped the gavel again. "Too hard this time, please. Decorum." A journalist from Channel 7 rose without being recognized. "Councilwoman, are you aware that the Foundation's project plans were fast-tracked through your office last year?" Thorne froze. "That's irrelevant." Petra's gaze sharpened. "Actually, it's not. The same zoning that cleared the Riverside Mall demolition." Whispers surged. The camera pivoted from Darius to Thorne. Darius realized the battlefield had shifted, not just about him now, but the entire apparatus around him. Thorne forced a smile. "We're losing focus. Mr. Johnson, do you or do you not accept responsibility for the division your actions caused?" He looked at the crowd, neighbors, workers, kids, the same faces that watched him scrub dishes months ago. "I accept responsibility for caring too much," he said, "for thinking we could build something without tearing each other down first." Petra stood suddenly. "Madam Councilwoman, permission to speak as communications director." Thorne hesitated. Briefly, Petra faced the room. "The Foundation's test was ill-advised." "I said so then. I say so now. But the reason it mattered, why it went viral, is because it exposed a truth we all avoid. Who we choose to celebrate depends on who tells the story first." She turned toward Darius. "This young man didn't fail any test. The rest of us did." A low murmur swept the room, part relief, part resentment. Thorne's lips tightened. Harold's jaw shifted. The first crack in his composure. Jerome raised his phone from the crowd. "Then let's tell the real story." He projected a clip onto the wall, Darius's original diner act, but this time extended, the part the public hadn't seen: Big Mike giving him food afterward, Sandy laughing, Darius washing the plates he'd eaten from. "Kindness didn't end at the burger," Jerome said. "It kept working the next day." Applause started on the left side of the room, growing louder until it drowned the rain. Thorne pounded the gavel. "This is not a rally." Reverend Booker leaned toward her. "Maybe it should be." When the noise finally ebbed, Harold spoke again. "Mr. Johnson, despite recent tensions, our offer stands, a revised one." He slid a new folder across the table. "Scholarship intact. Advisory board approved. You'll direct our first youth engagement council while we rebuild the diner as part of the community hub." Darius hesitated. "And the fine print. No NDAs." Harold said, just results. Victor hissed. We're making policy on the floor. Harold ignored him. You said you wanted transparency. Here it is. The cameras zoomed closer. The room waited. Darius didn't reach for the folder. You want me to sign now? No, Harold said. We want you to lead. Lead who? Darius asked. People who called me a hero, or people who called me a token? Both, Harold said. That's leadership. The words hung like a dare. Miss Ruby caught his eye, nodding once the same nod she gave before every hard choice, keep it shiny. He looked out over the crowd, some faces eager, others skeptical, all watching. I'll lead, Darius said finally. If we start with the truth. What truth? Thorne demanded. That the test was wrong, he said, but what it revealed is real. People are tired of being measured by pity and potential instead of by what they build. He turned toward Harold. And if I'm going to do this, I'm not working for the foundation. I'm working with it. And everyone will see what we build. No tinted glass between us. Thorne's face hardened. This hearing is over, she said, slamming the gavel. Reporters surged forward. Microphones collided. Flashbulbs strobed white across Darius's face. Harold extended a hand. You understand what comes next. Darius shook it. Public work. Public proof. Behind them, Petra whispered to Victor. He just hijacked our entire PR rollout. Victor muttered. Then we'd better make him look like the plan. Later that night, the hall emptied into wet streets. Darius stood alone under the awning, tea loosened, watching reflections of red brake lights swim in puddles. He could still hear fragments of the crowd inside anger, applause, confusion, all blending into one low hum. Petra approached, umbrella tilted. You realize you turned a scandal into a partnership announcement. He smiled faintly. Guess I passed another test. She studied him. Harold will spin it. Thorne will retaliate. You just made powerful enemies. Then I must be doing something right. Rain splattered her shoes. The foundation will reach out tomorrow. There's a lot to clean up. Glass cleans easier than lies, he said. She nodded once. See you at the rebuild. Director. At home, Miss Ruby was waiting with 2 mugs of cocoa. You were on TV again, she said. You looked steady, not scared. He sat beside her, exhausted. I was both, she chuckled. That's called being alive. Outside, thunder rolled far off, softer this time, like applause from the sky. He pulled the coin from his pocket, placed it on the table. It gleamed under the lamplight, polished by weeks of friction. Miss Ruby touched it gently. Still shiny, she said. Darius nodded. And still mine. Across town, workers boarded up what was left of Murphy's Diner for renovation. A banner already hung over the scaffolding. Coming soon. The Elm District Community Center, built by the hands that live here. Inside the dark diner, a single shard of glass caught the streetlight bright. Unbroken, Darius watched from across the street, rain soaking through his coat. The cameras had moved on. The noise was fading. What remained was work. He whispered to the empty air, to every voice that had doubted or defended him. Let's build. By late spring, the old Riverside Mall had become ribs in memory, steel bones against a rinsed blue sky, pigeons startled by the clank of rebar, wind moving through empty storefronts that once sold shoes and promises. Banners flapped along the chain-link fence. Coming soon, the Elm District Community Center, built by the hands that live here. Darius read the line every morning like a vow and a dare. The site smelled like wet concrete, diesel, and sawdust. Generators coughed. Radios muttered old R&B between hammer strikes. Men and women in orange vests moved like a slow choreography, measuring, lifting, checking, rechecking. The sun made the exposed beams looked like the inside of a cathedral that hadn't decided on a religion yet. Director Johnson called out Meera Patel, the site engineer, hard hat tilted back on a tight bun. We've got a load of drywall that doesn't match spec. Supplier. Derus asked, Glory build. She grimaced. On the council's preferred vendor list, he slid his tablet from a dust-scratched messenger bag. The public dashboard he'd insisted on glowed under the morning glare. Delays, spend, deliveries, variances, numbers that would either save him or bury him. He tapped through to the purchase order. The price was premium. The weight wasn't. The math insulted him. Refuse the shipment, he said. The truck driver, a man with forearms like tree trunks, rolled his eyes. That's 2 hours I ain't getting back. Chief, send the invoice to Councilwoman Thorne. Darius replied. Tell her we don't pour lies into walls. The driver snorted, but the truck hissed into reverse just the same. Gravel. Brakes. The slow complaint of a project learning to say no. From the temporary office trailer, Petra Sloan leaned on the aluminum steps, watching. Her blazer had surrendered to a field jacket. She'd learned to keep her hair tied and her statements looser. You just made a preferred contractor your enemy, she said. I didn't bring a cake, Darius answered. She offered a flat smile. Harold appreciates clean lines, not public brawls. Then he should have built a library, not a fight. Darius said, We're raising a building with mirrors. Petra glanced at the dashboard on his tablet. The mirrors are expensive. Not as expensive as a scandal, not as expensive as a halt, she countered. Every refused shipment adds a day. Every day adds a digit. Victor is counting. I know he is, Darius said, and felt the coin in his pocket warm already from his fingers. Keep it shiny. He'd once thought the coin meant dignity. Now it felt like an audit. By noon, the site pulsed. A lattice of scaffolding climbed the north elevation like an idea acquiring limbs. Sandy, who had gone from diner waitress to cafe in the making, stood with a notebook and a tape measure, eyes lit by a future she could already smell. This corner, she said, pointing to an open space near the glass. Morning light hits here just right. We put the espresso machine there, and people see it sparkle when they walk in. Espresso costs money. Big Mike rumbled from behind her, bandage long gone but the scar stubborn. He was consulting on the commercial kitchen build-out, like a man who'd learned every lesson from grease burns. So do we school lunches, Sandy shot back, then softened. We'll price it smooth. A rich person buys a latte. A kid gets a muffin. Darius smiled without meaning to. Make it a chalkboard, buy 2. Give 1. You write the poetry. Sandy said, I'll make the coffee. A crane swung overhead, its cable a humming nerve. The operator gave Darius a thumbs up through the glass. Darius returned it, then turned as Meera approached with a folded set of drawing. Another problem, he asked. Meera sighed. The electrician's crew, half are qualified, half are cousins. We're behind on conduit. I can push them, but push me first, Darius said. Local hire clause matters, but not at the cost of code. We promised both. Meera chewed her lip. Want to see something else? They stepped into the shade of the south wing where the clinic would be. The space already held shape exam rooms marked by tape, a future pharmacy sketched in blue lines, the waiting area positioned to face a wall of glass that would soften fear with sunlight. A boy on a BMX watched from outside the fence, spinning his back wheel with one hand, face bright as a copper coin. Kids pressed hands against the chain link, eyes following the slow miracle of walls rising. We're making a lot of promises, Meera said. We're making a lot of rooms for them, Darius answered. At 2 o'clock, Inspector Lowry arrived with a clipboard and a smirk. He always smelled faintly of cologne and absolution. Afternoon, Director. He said the word like it was a temporary illness. Random inspection, steel connections, scaffold tags, harness check, random as a calendar. Mira muttered. Lowry snapped chalk dust off his sleeve and walked the perimeter. He tapped at bolts like a doctor, pretending the reflexes mattered. He lifted a harness, squinted at a tag, nodded to a sub who laughed too loudly. After 20 minutes, he turned bored eyes on Darius. "You got a problem at the East Stack," Lowry said. "Tags expired." "It was inspected Friday," Mita replied. "Signed by Garrison." Lowry shrugged. "Tags invalid. Replace it or shut down the stack." "Replacing every tag halts the East Wing," Mira said. "We lose 2 days." Lowry's smile was gentle and ugly. "Or you lose nothing and find a way to make it right." He held the moment like a sales pitch. Darius looked at him, then at the scaffolding, then at the crowd of workers who had paused to listen without looking like they were listening. "What's the fine?" Darius asked. Lowry blinked. "Come again." "What's the fine for temporary closure to re-tag?" $5,000 a day," Lowry said. Darius nodded. "Mira, shut the stack. Jerome, put it on the dashboard. Petra, draft a statement." Lowry's smile leaked away. "No need for statements. There's always a need for statements," Petra said brightly. "For the record, the city's random inspections cost us $10,000 this week, while we complied and kept workers safe. Transparency is everyone's friend." Lowry's face did a small, satisfying thing. "You making enemies," he told Darius. "I'm making glass." Darius said, "Stand back. It cuts." Lowry left without looking over his shoulder, which Darius knew meant he'd be back. People who traded favors for a living struggled with stores that only took receipts. By 4, clouds assembled like men in suits. The wind changed. A storm was coming the way. Stories came stacked and hungry. Harold Vale's sedan slid up the gravel like a seal on gray water. He wore a raincoat that had never been rained on. Margaret followed, less formal, hands warm around a thermos. Victor Ames trailed, tied tight as a noose. Harold took in the sight with that still-eyed appraisal that could be affection or inventory. "You've refused 2 shipments this week," he said. "3 by the time you leave," Darius replied. Victor stepped forward. "Every refusal adds cost. Every cost threatens scope. Unless you're ready to cut a wing, we'll cut your cologne budget," Petra said from the trailer steps, then added quickly, "Kidding." Margaret's mouth tilted. "Is he kidding?" "Sometimes," Petra said. "Sometimes, not." Harold gestured toward the fence, where the BMX boy still hovered. "You've turned this into a theater." "Into a window," Darius corrected. "Audience on both sides." Harold studied him. "Transparency is a fine principle. It is not a schedule. It's how we avoid headlines with words like scandal." Darius said, "Ask Petra what she prefers to write." "I prefer opening," Petra said. "With a date?" Victor opened a folder. Fingernails clean and merciless. "Councilwoman Thorne has informed us that her office can assist with inspections and suppliers, provided her workforce development nonprofit receives a capacity grant. 200,000. Sandy, passing with a bundle of fabric samples, stopped mid-step. "That's the same councilwoman who wanted her nephew to run this place." "Right. Her nephew is now a program coordinator," Victor said. "Titles change. Realities remain." Darius looked from Harold to Margaret to Petra. He waited. "Say it. Say we decline." Margaret sipped from her thermos, eyes on the clinic's skeletal walls. "What would the advisory board say?" "We meet at 6. Darius said, "We'll ask them." Harold gave one of his small nods. "Then we will listen." Victor's jaw flexed. "We have to pour slab on the south wing next week. We cannot listen our way out of concrete." "Watch me," Darius said. Harold's eyes slid toward the sky. "You're on a wire. Son, Balance requires footwork, not speeches. I'm walking, Darius said. You brought me up here? The advisory board gathered under a tent that snapped in the strengthening wind, folding tables, paper cups, diagrams pinned with clothespin. It looked like every church basement meeting that had ever moved a mountain one shovel at a time. Old Mrs. Carter from the corner store sat beside Deshawn, who ran a two-man landscaping outfit that dreamed of becoming four. Ms. Prieto, Roosevelt, High's algebra teacher, twirled a pen over a stack of curriculum proposals. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the clinic's future lead, whispered with Mira about exam room square footage. Reverend Booker arrived late, hands still damp from baptizing a baby whose mother looked like she needed a nap and a revolution. Darius briefed them with the candor he'd promised the bad drywall, the inspection squeeze, the councilwoman's soft shakedown. He didn't embellish. He didn't soften. He opened the book and let them read. What happens if we refuse? Ms. Prieto asked. Inspections get harder, Mira said. Supplies get slower. We miss weather windows. What happens if we pay? Reverend Booker asked. We owe a politician, Petra answered. And we teach a lesson that will repeat. Deshawn cracked his knuckles. My cousin says Thorne's people are talking like this already belongs to them. My cousin talks a lot, but he listens more. Mrs. Carter coughed softly. I got 2 grandkids standing outside that fence every day watching this place grow. If we fill it with lies, they'll smell it in the drywall. Doctor, Martinez folded her arms. We cannot compromise clinical build, not materials, not safety, not staffing. If that slows us, we slow. Patients deserve care that doesn't collapse. Big Mike grunted approval. Sandy squeezed his forearm. Reverend Booker turned to Darius. You invited us to vote, so let's vote. They did. Hands raised. Counted. Recounted. Rain hit the tent like coins tossed hard against a plate. When the tally came, it was clear. We refuse. Darius said. No capacity grant to Thorne. No bad drywall. No sham inspections bought with a wink. Cheers. Nervous laughter. A few people looked at the sky like they'd just announced themselves to a god who kept ledgers. Margaret pressed her lips together but nodded. Harold's jaw eased by a quarter-inch. Victor looked like a man who had discovered a new allergy. Then we prepare for pain, Harold said, and we document the bruises. Petra was already tapping her tablet. I'll draft the release. Make it boring, Darius said. Boring truth sticks longer. Copy. Petra said. Boring is the new brave. The storm arrived, the way trouble does sudden, loud, personal. Wind slid a sheet of plastic off the east scaffolding. It snapped like a flag and wrapped around a worker's legs. He stumbled. A shout shot across the site. Harnesses held like promises. Then a second shout. Sharper smoke from the tool shed. A black bloom where there should have been nothing but the smell of rain and wood. Darius ran. He didn't think about the coin or the cameras. He thought about oxygen and distance and all the things that made flame an argument you could only win with speed. Extinguishers. Mira yelled. Already there. Deshawn grabbed a red canister, yanked the pin, and foamed the doorway like he'd done it every day of his life. Someone else unspooled a hose. Jerome was shouting about the breaker. Big Mike and Sandy herded the kids back from the fence. Voices firm. Petra called 911 with a voice that didn't shake. Inside the shed, the fire ate cardboard first, then kissed the gas can like a dare. For a second, it licked toward the stack of insulation, a breath of what could become tragedy. Then the foam took, the hose hissed, the flames sulked and surrendered. Smoke muscled out past them and blew across the site like a grudge. Mira crouched, coughing, and held up the charred remains of a rag soaked in something that didn't belong in a tool shed. She raised an eyebrow. Spontaneous combustion. Or a friend, Darius said, eyes cold now, anger filing itself sharp. He turned to Petra. Cameras. We've got 2 sight feeds and a traffic cam on 5th, she said. I'll pull them. Victor approached, face pale. If this gets out, it already got out. Darius snapped, pointing at the sky where a drone hovered, blinking red. We either own the truth or watch someone else sell it. The fire department arrived. Hoses snaked. Reports were taken. Names were misspelled and corrected. Inspector Lowry reappeared, as if conjured by smoke. He walked the perimeter with the sanctimony of a man who believes circumstances exist to excuse him. Unsafe storage. He pronounced, further inspections required. You'll need a temporary partial shutdown. Of course, Darius said evenly. While you're at it, check the locks we asked for last week and never got approved. Lowry blinked. Those requests weren't filed properly. Funny, Petra said, holding up her tablet with a digital paper trail. Our timestamps are very proper. Lowry's gaze slid away. Harold watched it all without inserting himself, rain haloing his shoulders, handkerchief unused. He stepped to Darius only when the sirens had faded, and the sight returned to the business of being injured and determined. You're being tested, Harold said softly. Not for character this time, Darius replied. For fatigue. Harold almost smiled. They always aim for the leg. They can have my legs. Darius said, they don't get my knees. The next morning's release went live at 7:00 a.m. Sharp. Project update. Partial shutdown on East Scaffolding, pending retag safety first. Tools shed incident under investigation. No injuries. No structural damage. Materials refusal. Out of spec. Drywall rejected to uphold quality. Public dashboard reflects current costs delays. Advisory board vote 9. 2 affirmed policy. No political grants tied to approvals. Built in glass. Built to last. Channel 7 used the phrase built in glass as a chyron. Another outlet spun it into a joke about the building having too many windows. Councilwoman Thorne posted a statement about regrettable delays caused by inexperience, and her nephew liked 3 replies that called Darius cocky. Petra tracked it all. Eyes like rain rather. At lunch, a group of union reps marched up, clipboards like shields. Their leader, a woman named Alma, with a voice like sandpaper and sermon, parked herself in front of Darius. You're hiring local, she said. We respect that. You're rejecting bad materials. We respect that more, but your sub is cutting corners on overtime pay that we don't respect. Darius looked past her at the electrician's cousins, looked at Alma. He didn't sigh. Bring me proof, he said, then bring me a replacement bid. Alma nodded once. You'll make enemies. I have a house full of chairs. Darius said, they can sit. She cracked a smile. We'll send a proposal by 4. In the quiet between crises, Darius wandered the clinic wing alone. The light threw long rectangles across the slab, softening edges. Not even ground yet. He paused where a waiting room would be. He tried to hear it alive, kids arguing about stickers. A nurse, calling a name gently, a blood pressure cuff sighing. The rustle of a magazine fired by hands instead of rage. He thought about his mother's breath the night before the accident, how it had risen and fallen steady and sure. No machines, no tubes. He hadn't known. Then, that breath was a bank account you could overdraw without noticing. Footsteps. Doctor. Martinez joined him. Helmet unter Arm. You okay? She asked. He chewed the inside of his cheek. Define okay. Standing, she said. That counts. He leaned against a stud that would carry a wall, and Someday, a framed poster about diabetes risks. Nobody would read. Am I arrogant? He asked. Probably, she said. So is every surgeon and every teacher who isn't lying. Arrogance is believing only you can fix it. Leadership is knowing you can't and trying anyway. He was silent. The rain had held off for an hour. The city felt like the pause between inhale and exhale. You'll lose something in this, she said. I don't know what, but you'll lose it. That's the tax. What if I lose my neighborhood? He asked before the thought could shame him. You don't own it, she said gently. You steward it. And stewards build succession plans. He thought of Jerome's hands on a camera that told the truth. Thought of Sandy's chalkboard and Big Mike's scar. Thought of Ms. Prieto's pen and Deshawn's foam and Reverend Booker's damp hands. He pictured a meeting without him. Voices loud and wrong, and then better because they belonged to someone else who cared. Okay, he said. Then we write the plan. At dusk, the clouds finally gave up their waiting and let go. Rain drummed a rhythm the sight already knew. The fences caught it and sang a tinny song. Under the tent, the advisory board argued about a line item that would become a miracle or a headache. Petra cross-checked outlets. Mira recalculated. Inspector Lowry did not return. That worried Darius more than a citation would have. Silence is a strategy. His phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. We see you turning down the right people. The wrong people noticed. Check the back gate after midnight. A second text followed a grainy photo of the back gate. Bolt cut clean. Chain hanging like a mood. He looked up. The site was a wet maze in the dark. Somewhere a loose tarp snapped like a flag. Somewhere else a tool thudded in the wind and made the sound of a footfall too slow. He walked to the trailer where Harold and Margaret were reviewing a change order, and Victor was pretending not to read a story calling him the Foundation's purse. I need security doubled tonight, Darius said, and not from the city. Private, Harold asked. Neighbors, Darius answered. People who know the difference between a toolbox and a torch. That's vigilante, Victor said. That's community watch. Petra corrected. And it photographs well. Margaret studied Darius's face. You look tired. I am, he said, but not tired enough to let them write the ending. He stepped back into the rain. It felt less like punishment and more like permission. He walked the fence from corner to corner. The BMX boy was gone. The drone had tired. The site was his and not his. A creature asleep with one eye open. He ran his palm over the chain at the back gate. The cut was clean. He imagined hands in the dark with bolt cutters and reason. He imagined what wouldn't happen if he did nothing. He imagined Miss Ruby's coin dulling in his pocket because he'd let other people polish his choices with their opinions. He took out the coin, wiped it on his shirt, held it under the lightning like a lens. Keep it shiny, he whispered to himself. To the gate, to the rain, to the future that kept insisting he pick a side while he was busy building a bridge. Behind him, the skeleton of the center rose black against a sudden sheet of light. For a breath, it looked finished glass glittering, rooms breathing, people moving in a cut of time where everything had already worked. Then the lightning withdrew, and the ribs were ribs again, and the wind tugged a loose banner, so it cracked like applause. He turned his collar up, checked the locks twice, and dialed Jerome. Bring the bike, he said. We're on watch. Tonight, Jerome asked. Tonight, Darius said, and every night they make us choose between fear and glass. He slid the coin back into his pocket, felt its round insistence, and stood in the rain until the cold crept into his bones and turned resolve into something harder. When Petra stepped out to tell him the Alma Union proposal had arrived, fair wages, clean overtime, a promise to swap out the electrician's cousins for certified hands. He nodded. took the packet, and signed the memo to begin vetting before morning. Victor will hate that, Petra said. He can write a memo about it. Darius replied. She looked past him at the ribs of the future and sighed. This is going to break you. You know. He half grinned. Then let it break me into scaffolding. They stood there a moment in a rain that had stopped asking for permission. Behind them, the site breathed. Ahead of them, the back gate waited like a question that was also an answer. Darius folded Alma's proposal into his bag, checked the chain one more time, and set his chair facing the gate. The coin pressed into his thigh through wet denim. It felt like a small, hot truth. He sat. He listened. Nails in boxes settled. Paper curled where it wasn't supposed to be. Somewhere, a siren traded news with distance, and somewhere beyond the fence, steps learned whether they were brave or just noisy. When midnight came, it found him awake. And when morning found him, he intended to still be here, rain-soaked, coin bruised, unbent, ready to choose glass again. The storm returned like a memory that refused to be quiet. Rain strafed the new center's unfinished panes, each drop a pin against the ribs of steel. Inside the skeleton, emergency lights pulsed a frail orange. Darius stood alone at the temporary conference table, plywood on sawhorses, spreading out printouts until the paper made a pale river. The dashboard numbers glowed on his tablet. Receipts, theme stamps, emails, a map of decisions and their prices. Miss Ruby watched the late news in the corner on a portable TV. The sound was low, but the crawler spoke loudly enough. Foundation under state probe. Board emergency session at dawn. She didn't look over. She didn't need to belong. Don't forget your coin, she said, as if advising a knight to remember his armor. Keep it shiny. He rolled the coin across his knuckles, habit now. A metronome, then slid it into his pocket and zipped it shut. The storm rumbled. Somewhere above, plastic tarps belled and snapped. Somewhere beyond the fence, a siren smeared itself thin. Headlights swung into the mudlot. The wipers marked time like a hard teacher. The driver killed the engine but left the lights on. Rain blew silver in the beams. Elena Alvarez opened the door and sat for a second with both hands on the wheel, like she had to convince them she meant to let go. She'd been compliance at Whitmore title tidy, duty dirtier. She had also, quietly, been the first to email Petra with an unsigned rumor. Check travel reimbursements. Check capacity grants. Check the way Harold writes temporary. Now she stepped out, hood up, eyes bright and raw. If I do this, I don't get my job back, she said, before she even reached him. If you don't do it. Darius answered, no one gets theirs. She forced a breath, then slid a flash drive across the wet plywood. Internal memos, expenses, board minutes, red lines on contracts that never hit the public filings. The audit Victor buried because the adjectives were inconvenient. He looked at the drive and didn't touch it. You sure? Yes, she said, and swallowed. No, I don't know. But I can't keep letting him call what we do charity, when it's just control with better catering. A gust shoved rain into the tent. The papers rattled. Elena pressed her hands down to hold them still, but he could see the tremor. He thought of the first time he'd reached for a hot pan without a rag. The lesson had stung him honest. Some truths only learned when skin met heat. Why us? Darius asked. Why not a newsroom? You'll use it to build, she said. They'll use it to break. He nodded. Then we build in glass, and we show our receipts. They shook hands beneath a savage tarp, and for an instant the work lights flickered in a way that made the handshake look lit from inside. The moment did not make Elena less afraid. It made her fear mean something. Petra's waiting, Darius said. We'll copy, encrypt, duplicate, and then forget we even know where the first copy is. Elena exhaled like she'd been carrying an anvil under her ribs. "You're good at sounding like a plan. I'm good at acting like I already started," he said. She allowed herself one quick smile. "See you at the courthouse." She slid back into her car, driving away with headlights bent by rain, whippers still scolding. Darius turned to Miss Ruby. She didn't ask what was on the drive. She didn't need to. "Put the kettle on," she said. "Rain's loud. Tea makes answers quieter." "Tea doesn't make Harold nicer," he said. "No," she agreed, "but it makes you steadier." Steady beat slick. He took the flash drive to the trailer, where Petra had already built a war room from a folding table and 3 old laptops that looked like they'd seen betrayals before. When he set the drive down, she glanced once, then pushed across a legal pad with a list: duplicate 3x, store 1 off-site, verify hashes, cross-ref memos with public filings, build timeline, 1-page boring truth for press, prepare statements, Elena protected. Margaret if she flips. Darius closing. "Do you sleep?" he asked. She chewed her lower lip. "On Tuesdays. Sometimes." They worked until the sky ripened into a dull brew. At 5:52 a.m., a text from an unknown number. Board met. 2 resignations. 1 stroke. Harold furious. Media at the courthouse by 8. Margaret. Darius guessed. Petra raised an eyebrow. If so, we're now in the phase of history where the architects of the problem send us directions to the fire exit. Morning plucked the town like a wire. News vans crowded the courthouse steps. Tripods grew legs. Microphones sprouted logos and ambition. The rotunda's glass wore rain in long verticals, turning the crowd outside into a watercolor of umbrellas and mouths. Inside, a smell of wool, coats, and coffee and electricity from too many devices drinking at old outlets. The hearing room offered its long table, its unforgiving microphones, its rows of seats carved for unanimous backs. Sandy arrived in her best black dress, hair slicked by the weather and her own resolve. Big Mike wore a shirt that almost tucked in. Mira checked her phone with the impatience of a person allergic to rooms where nothing got built. Reverend Booker clasped his hands and whispered something that didn't sound like a prayer and did anyway. Miss Prieto slipped him a tissue and didn't say why. Elena sat 2 rows behind Darius, eyes fixed on the seal above the dais. She wore no makeup. She vibrated like a struck glass. Councilwoman Thorne called the hearing to order, her gavel the size of her certainty. The state attorney's office had sent a deputy with a legal pad and a face that looked like it respected verbs. A court reporter flexed her ears. Harold Vale entered last, rein on his cuffs that somehow failed to touch him. Margaret walked beside him, but not with him. Victor followed, T strangling him politely. Harold surveyed the room like a man who remembered when it answered to his checkbook and struggled to recall why today should be different. The gavel cracked again. "This is a public hearing on allegations of fraudulent practice by the Whitmore Foundation in its Elm District project and beyond. We will hear statements and receive evidence. This is not a trial. It is an inquiry." The deputy from the AG's office leaned into his mic. "And note for the record, a separate criminal investigation is underway." A wave rolled through the room. "Oh, so this mattered." Thorne's smile flashed. First witness, Elena Alvarez. Elena stood like a person standing on deck, trying to calibrate for waves. She sat. Her oath sounded like a promise she had memorized in childhood and finally found a stage for. "Ms. Alvarez," Thorne said, "state your position." "I was senior compliance analyst at Whitmore," Elena said, voice steadying as it learned itself aloud. "And your reason for coming forward, because compliance without consequence is just grammar," she said. We kept the commas in place and let the numbers lie. Petra glanced at Darius. That line goes in the headline. Thorne gestuurd. Proceed. Elena placed a stack of printed memos on the table, neat as surgical tools. She spoke dates like she'd filed them in her spine. Capacity grants tied to approvals. Travel marked program development coinciding with donor retreats. A draft PR statement using Darius's name before anyone had offered him a seat at any table. Expenses recoded post hoc to improve narrative fitness. Who authorized recodes? The AG deputy asked. CFO Victor Ames. Elena said. She didn't look at him. Victor's pen clicked twice. A small panic. And who approved the concept of field assessments, the test you ran on Mr. Johnson? Elena swallowed. Mr. Vale. A soft intake across the room. The sound of people letting a fact rattling through them. Harold's eyebrow rose, a twitch of amusement. He didn't look worried. Not yet. He looked inconvenienced, like a man pulled into weather he hadn't scheduled. Thorne nodded to the clerk. Enter exhibits A through G. Elena turned to Darius for the first time since taking the stand. She didn't smile. Exactly. Something more like a promise passed between them. I'm doing my part. Do yours. She stepped down, lighter and more exposed at once. Next witness, Thorne said. She had expected hand grenades and had been given a crate for a second. She seemed almost reluctant to pick the next pin. Margaret Vale. The room did a collective blink. Margaret's nameplate had never been hers in rooms like this. She sat, tilted the microphone, and found Darius's eyes. The last time she'd done that, paper blueprints had promised futures. This time, paper trails promised pasts. State your role, Thorne said. Former co-chair of the Whitmore Foundation, Margaret said, silence afterward, as if the room expected her to add, and still proud. She did not. Mrs. Vale, the AG deputy said, do you confirm the documents Ms. Alvarez submitted are accurate? Yes. Were you aware of the staged assessment at the diner? Yes. Did you oppose it? Silence. Rain escalated against the tall window behind the dais, a roar like secrets remembering themselves. No, Margaret said. I rationalized it. I told myself character couldn't be taught in conferences, only revealed. I refused to ask whether revealing someone else's character without their consent revealed mine. Her hands trembled. She didn't hide them. We tested a boy because he was poor and black and visible. We would not have tested a senator's son. Thorne's face performed concern. Did Mr. Vale authorize further strategies of control? Margaret's lip quivered. The smallest possible admission of ruin. Harold approved the grants that bought access. He approved the vendors that bought loyalty. He cut boring truth from press releases because it didn't trend. Did you approve them? Thorne asked. Margaret stared at the table, then lifted her chin. I signed. I am sorry. Not as PR, but as a human who knows better now. Victor muttered something under breath. A prayer for escape or an insult low enough to be safe. The court reporter looked up anyway. Harold leaned forward, voice soft and rehearsed. If my wife feels guilt, I can't erase it for her. But charity is messy work. Try feeding 1,000 people and tell me all your receipts look perfect. The AG deputy said, you mislabeled bribes as capacity grants. Messy is one thing. Criminal is another. Harold's jaw flexed. You think capacity builds itself? You think neighborhoods grow like moss? They grow because men like me give them a trellis. A door marked Hubris swung open and invited him in. Reverend Booker exhaled a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sermon. The audience murmured low. The frequency dogs hear when a storm approaches, and humans pretend it is only wind. Thorne tapped her mic. Mr. Vale, Please wait until you're called. Call me, Harold said, turning toward the room as if it were a camera he owned. You've been calling me for a decade every time your budgets failed. Every time you needed a ribbon to cut when the bins were empty, he delivered. Now you'd crucify me because the story doesn't look pretty on a chyron. The mic was live. The mic was always live. Petra didn't even have to nudge the news producer. She knew 2 rows back. The woman already had a finger on the clip button. Harold continued, not looking at Margaret, not looking at Darius. You want to know what's real? Communities do not self-organize because a waitress believes in charity. They work because money shapes them. Because men like me decide which people deserve to be people. Margaret said, voice small and nuclear. The room froze. Harold stopped, realizing too late the sentence he'd built for himself. He tried to step backward from it. The step had no floor. The AG deputy sat back. He didn't smile. His pen moved like a guillotine caught. On record. Thorne recovered first. She adopted her best civic righteous cadence. We'll take a 10-minute recess. No, the deputy said, almost kindly. Let's not let accountability catch a coffee. Harold's attorney leaned in and murmured. Harold's face learned the shape of a man being told you just confessed to the thing in front of everyone with microphone. Miss Ruby dabbed her eyes, wore his best suit to his own undoing. She whispered to no one, and to Darius. Thorne gestuurd briskly. Mr. Johnson, you requested time for a statement. You may proceed. The rain answered before he did, pushing against the courthouse glass like a crowd trying to enter. He stood and walked toward the table. The room didn't breathe, or maybe it did very carefully. Elena's hands were clenched, knuckles white. Margaret's lawyer put a palm flat on a briefcase like it could anchor her. Victor stared at his reflection in his water cup. Darius didn't shuffle papers. He didn't need to remember. He had been rehearsing on nights when exhaustion pretended to be sleep. He adjusted the mic, the feedback squealed, and then submitted. My name is Darius Johnson, he said. I wash dishes better than I give speeches. But I'm learning. A few half-laughs rippled. Permission to hear pain in a friendly voice. I've heard a lot about what men like Mr. Valibild, he said, turning his head just enough to include Harold without making the day about him. But where I'm from, we were building before anyone spelled philanthropy, right? We were building with rides to the clinic and free tutoring and casseroles when a paycheck turned to prescriptions. He looked at the stack of memos. What these papers prove is not that money is evil. It proves that calling something help doesn't excuse harm. He let it hang. The rain obliged by hammering the words into the glass until they felt etched. I'm not here to ask for a check. I'm here to ask for witnesses. Because integrity doesn't need funding, it needs witnesses. The room leaned in. Somewhere, a camera operator mouthed the sentence to herself so she wouldn't forget it on the ride back to the station. Witnesses who will say no when a deal asks us to lie to our kids, Darius continued. Witnesses who will sign their names on boring truth, even when a headline wants glamour. Witnesses who will throw out bad drywall and bad values even if it costs 2 days and some sleep. He didn't look at Thorne. He didn't have to. The weight found her anyway. We can rebuild money, he said, softer now. We can't rebuild trust. That's the only capital that multiplies when you share it. He rested both hands on the table like it was a pulpit built from scraps and receipts. He took a breath and handed the room something he'd been carrying, not anger, not even forgiveness, just consequence. So here's the ask. Freeze the accounts you need to freeze. Subpoena what needs to be pulled. But don't shut our site down. Let the community run interim operations under the advisory board. Let the clinic wing open on schedule with volunteer physicians and loaned equipment. We have a union proposal ready. We have line items clean enough to eat off. We have a waiting room that needs bodies and a sign that needs meaning. He paused just long enough for Petra to see the sentence land in the notes of 6 reporters at once. The foundation can face its music. He finished. We'll keep time. Silence. As if the room wanted to make the echo laugh, Thorne lifted her chin. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. The council will confer. No, the AG deputy said again, voice clearer now, like the rain had rinsed it. I'll confer in public. We will recommend a targeted freeze executive operating accounts placed under receivership, project escrow preserved. The Elm District build continues under court oversight. With monthly public accounting, a sound rose half relief, half awe, with a note of fear. Accountability had chosen a narrow bridge, hard to cross, safer than the river. Harold's lawyer leaned in again. Harold pressed his lips thin as if physical pressure could plug a leaking statement. Margaret stared ahead with a steadiness that looked like penance evolving into purpose. Reverend Booker murmured, Amen. Not because the fight was over, but because a new round had declared itself. Thorne tapped the gavel, but it sounded small. The room's center had moved. Outside, the storm had not finished with its art. The courthouse steps shone slick. Reporters swarmed but didn't know which corner of the story would sell highest. The cameras wanted the villain shot. The crowd wanted the witness. Both wanted quotes. Margaret found Darius on the landing where the rain sluiced off the roof in bright sheets. She stood with her umbrella at her side, letting water wet her hair. You were right, she said, voice ragged, about kindness. It's heavier than it looks, he replied. I told myself we could carry it because our bags were expensive. She laughed once, hurt and small. I don't want to be that person anymore. You don't have to want, he said. You just have to stop. Will you let me help? She asked. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He looked past her shoulder at the crowd, then back at her, and nodded at something harder than permission. Testify again, he said. Then come fold chairs. There's a shift open every night. She nodded, rain glazing her. Accountability looks like paperwork. Until it looks like hand. Elena approached, eyes rimmed but standing taller. It's out, she said. They can't bury what I gave you. They'll try, Petra said, stepping up behind them with her phone buzzing. Harold's hot mic is trending. Thorne is attempting a clean quote. Victor is pretending to resign voluntarily. Inspector Lowry has gone to ground. Darius scanned the street and saw Lowry anyway across the way, in the lee of a coffee truck, hat low, watching like a man taking notes he didn't plan to write down. You didn't need a subpoena for a grudge. Next fight will be uglier, Petra added, softer now. Funding streams, hate adrenaline. Now that the board is collapsing, lenders will posture, friends will wait, enemies will hurry. And we build anyway, Darius said. And we build anyway, Petra echoed, as if saying it twice might make the walls rise faster. Big Mike and Sandy muscled through the knot of umbrellas. I brought muffins, Sandy said, because someone always had to say something normal in a day that did not want to be. You made them this morning. Elena Blinker. This morning started yesterday, Sandy said. Ave, a blueberry. It tastes like survival. They stood on the courthouse steps, sharing warm paper bags, while a scandal unspooled around them like rented lights. Miss Ruby leaned her cane against the railing and slipped an arm through Darius's, making the moment fit the size of her grandson again. From the river of reporters, a voice rose young, eager, already skeptical. Mr. Johnson, with the board collapsing and the investigation open, how do you justify continuing the project? Isn't that tainted money? Darius swallowed the reply his bone wanted. He chose the one his future needed. Every dollar is a question, he said. We're answering in public. Bring your cameras to the payroll line." The reporter blinked. Wrong-footed. Petra smiled. Boring truth. Her eyes said, "Stick to it." Across the plaza, Harold stood with two lawyers under a dry umbrella, telling himself in low phrases the things men tell themselves when they have not yet learned their voices no longer cause rooms to obey. His gaze tracked to Darius once, and the axis that used to run through him didn't anymore. Something in his eyes broke and tried to rehearse itself back together. Margaret did not look at him. Victor tried to hustle him toward a waiting car. A microphone snuck past counsel and lanced toward Harold's mouth. He almost answered. Then he remembered the mic, the sentence, the trellis. He shut his lips with force enough to whiten them. A bus rumbled by. On its side, a torn advertisement for a luxury condo promised glass living. The words caught Darius's eye and made him laugh, which made Miss Ruby laugh, which made Sandy insist on giving the AG deputy a muffin. The deputy took it. "For the record," he said. "Blueberry." The record, rich with wrongs, took the right along with it. Rain ratcheted down to drizzle. The courthouse glass wore streaks, like the residue of a hard truth rinsed with a harder one. The plaza emptied in arcs media to the editing bays, lawyers to rooms with no windows, neighbors to work that did not pause for scandals because the rent did not either. Darius looked up the sky a lighter gray now, as if the day had negotiated a temporary peace. He turned the coin in his pocket. The metal felt warm again, not from friction this time, but from proximity to the blood. He could feel racing fear and relief, and the thrum of a story that had not ended. Petra touched his shoulder. "Receivership order will hit by 5, she said. "We'll need to meet with the court's appointee." "Fine," he said. "Bring Alma from the union. Bring Dr. Martinez. Bring Ms. Prieto. We'll make the meeting look like the building." "And Harold?" Petra asked. "He'll bring himself," Darius said. "He doesn't know another way." Miss Ruby squeezed his arm. "Keep it shiny," she said. "I will," he said, "but not polished. Polished is for trophies. We're building tools." They started down the steps, not triumphal, not beaten, just moving because motion was the only protest that paid interest. At the curb, a city van splashed through a shallow lake and painted their shoes with clean water. "Next chapter writes itself," Sandy said. "No," Petra replied. "We write it, and the city edits. Then we leave them no red pen." Darius said. They crossed the street toward the center, which rose beyond the sycamores like a promise somebody had finally dared to draft in steel. The rain slicked the pavement into a mirror. In it, they were taller than they felt, steadier than they feared, walking toward a building that wanted their names less than it wanted their hand. Behind them, the courthouse loomed glass, stone, memory. Inside, a microphone cooled. On someone's desk, a blueberry stain deepened into something official. Ahead, the fence waited. The gate they had watched at midnight would need watching again. The locks were better, but locks were just pauses between attempts. Darius touched the coin, then the fence. "Tonight," he said. "Tonight," Jerome echoed from behind the lens. "And the rain?" Now only a whisper. "Agreed." The order arrived at 4:58 p.m., stamped and heavy with the ink of consequence. Petra held it with 2 fingers, like a violinist weighing a new bow. "State Receivership Limited," she read. "Project escrow preserved. Executive operating accounts frozen. Monthly public accounting. Court-appointed receiver, Ruthann Cole." "Cole?" Mira asked. "The municipal fixer who made the Riverwalk stop collapsing." "Same," Petra said. "Known for 2 verbs, cut and keep." The paper trembled once in Petra's hand, not from fear, but from the courthouse air conditioning trying to make itself relevant. They were standing in a hallway, that smelled like old carpet and minor history. Beneath a framed portrait of a mayor who had learned to smile with only his teeth, Darius exhaled. We can work with cut and keep. Outside, cameras still foraged the steps for leftover quotes. Harold had been whisked away earlier, trailed by a lawyer whose hair had learned to lie smoother than facts. Margaret had left through a side door with her umbrella closed, inviting rain the way a penitent invites ache. Elena had vanished into a side street, where Petra's sedan waited 2 blocks down. Hazard lights, talking in steady semaphore. Now the hallway emptied. The silence hummed like a refrigerator at midnight. The sound of a system that wants to be trusted and can't remember how. Miss Ruby squeezed Darius's arm. Receivership, she said, tasting the syllables. Sounds like catching. Catch what you can and don't let what you can't make you foolish. Darius laughed under his breath. Yes, Mom. They took the stairs down, each landing, accepting their weight with a groan. On the ground floor, the city clerk leaned out of her window, lipstick brave against a tired face. Mr. Johnson, this just came in. She slid over an envelope with notice public oversight session. 14 days across the top. 14 days to prove we can run without the board. Petra translated, 14 days for your enemies to seed doubt. They've been sowing since spring, Sandy said, appearing with a bakery box like a talisman. Now they'll start harvesting. Tell me there's coffee in that. Reverend Booker said, there's always coffee. Sandy replied, it tastes like faith when you've run out. Cole showed up to the site with a hard hat and a measuring tape clipped to her belt, the kind of official who believed numbers more than nouns. Early 50s, good boots, hair shaved close for efficiency, eyes that missed nothing and forgave only what worked. She walked the perimeter first, reading the site like a doctor reads a chart, pipes, drainage, scaffolding that had learned humility. She didn't speak for 10 minutes. The crew fell silent in her wake. Finally, she looked up at the glass skeleton and nodded once. You've got bones, she said. Bones are what money can't add later. That's good news. And the bad, Darius asked. She turned to him. Your trades are nervous. They hear receivership. They think no pay. They'll walk if we don't calm it by Friday. We'll pay, Petra said. Escrow is preserved. Preserved doesn't mean reachable, Cole said. Judges love handcuffs with ribbon. She led them into the trailer. On the whiteboard, she drew a big rectangle, then cut it into thirds. Wages, materials, permits inspections. Everything that isn't one of these becomes rumor fodder, she said. You spend $1 on something that looks like PR. Half the town will call it a bribe. You spend $1 on a consultant with too nice a watt. Everyone will remember it. When the drywall buckles, boring truth, remember it. Tattooed, Petra said. Cole took the receivership binder out of her bag and set it down like a manual for a plane you had to land without both engines. Here's the deal, Mr. Johnson. My job is not to make you feel good. My job is to keep this ship from going Titanic. While the band argues about the set list, good. Darius said, I don't like bands. She squinted at him, fighting a smile she had not scheduled. You'll meet me every morning at 7 a.m. in this trailer with a stack of invoices and a list of workers' names. We pay what we can pay when we can pay it. We post the list of payments every Friday at noon. We let the town watch us sweat. Let them, Mira said. Invite them, Cole corrected. Sunlight makes liars clumsy. She turned to Alma, who had arrived with a thermos and the union book under her arm. You're on labor peace. Get me signatures that say, no strike. Contingent on verified payroll. I'll get you the verification. Alma stuck out her hand. Deal? Cole shook it and moved on. A small army in one person. Dr. Martinez. In the clinic shell, second floor, west wing, Petra said, she's been waiting on the oxygen lines inspection. Cole made a note. We are going to open that clinic wing with volunteer shifts and loaner equipment before the first donor tries to buy a plaque. It will not be pretty. It will be open. Dr. Martinez appeared, lab coat over jeans, hair braided tight. I can staff weekends with residents. I can call favors for a portable x-ray. But if supply vendors get spooked, they'll get paid cod. Cole said, we're going to run this like a depression soup line with better aspirins. She looked back to Darius. Questions. Just one, he said. What do you need from me? Cole tipped her chin. Appraising. Be boring loud. When the microphones come, hand them receipts. When your enemies bait you, feed them schedule. And when you get tired, don't get remarkable. Remarkable is for ribbon cuttings. We're in the part of the story where dull saves lives. I can do dull, he said. Miss Ruby coughed from the doorway. Not for long. You can't, she said, but she smiled when she said it. The first Friday came like a verdict. Petra taped a sheet protector to the chain-link fence and slid in a laser-printed table. Week 1. Disbursements receivership. Payroll Carpenters Union Lokal 411 42 Ibai 23 Ake confirm. Payroll Electricians Local 82 6 Sardavi Jobai Lingar 10 Ake confirm. Independent Day Labor verified. Sube 00 Cashiers checks. Vendor Concrete Works. Inc. Partial. Etten, Ling 00 Payment Plan Agreement. Vendor Odo Supply Cod. Jobai Boscher 00 paid. City Inspect Expedite Fee Waiver. AP proved. At noon, a small crowd had gathered, trades in dusty boots, neighbors with strollers, a cameraman pretending not to be filming. Alma read the list with a finger under each line, nodded once, and turned to her guys. Checks are real. We keep swinging. A few clapped, someone whistled, low and approving. Jerome, behind a modest camera rig, panned slowly across faces. Roll on boring, he muttered. It's the new porn. Sandy stood with a tray of paper cups steaming in the damp air. Free coffee for anyone who can tell me where line item number 3 got the extra 23 cents, she announced. Rounding error. Mira said. Rounding dignity. Sandy corrected. We pay to the penny. Across the street, a black SUV idled. Inside, Inspector Lowry watched through rain-cleaned glass. Lips tight. He scribbled something in a notebook with a pen that looked like it had never seen a bad sentence. When he noticed Jerome's lens tilt his way, he drove off, turning left without signaling. Think he'll be back? Petra asked. Rot always returns. Reverend Booker said, like mildew in summer, but bleach exists. The calls came from numbers that used to make Petra sit up straighter. Now she let them ring twice and put them on speaker. The bank cautious. The state grants office more cautious. A former board member's assistant's assistant drenched in concern like a pastry in glaze. We are exploring the possibility of a transition stipend to ensure continuity of community-facing initiatives. Translation. Petra said, not bothering to mute. You want to buy the narrative and staple it to Harold's resume. On the contrary, the assistant said, voice peeling, we value Mr. Johnson's leadership and would simply, great, Petra said, wire payroll or send napkins. Darius leaned against the trailer door frame and watched the steel rise another floor. Mornings smelled like sawdust and singed insulation, afternoons like wet earth and warm paper. The site sang hammers, hailed orders, a radio bleeding old soul through static Between it all, small sabotage attempted to learn big. A pallet of drywall left in the rain overnight. A box of circuit breakers swapped with units rated for a different voltage. A brick through the trailer window at 2 a.m. Note attached glass cuts both ways. Cole had the brick bagged and logged before breakfast. People who write notes don't know electricians, she said. They also don't know that camera we installed with the donated ring light. They pulled grainy footage, 2 silhouettes, one with a limp, the other with a nervous laugh that kept failing to be brave. Lowry, Victor, neither. 2 of Thorne's hang-on aides looking to audition as villains. Cole sent the file to the AG deputy with a subject line, crime, but make it petty. Thorne held a press conference in front of a mural painted by kids who hadn't yet learned to curdle their hope. We will ensure the integrity of public-private partnerships, she intoned. We will not tolerate fraud, nor will we allow witch hunts that jeopardize progress. She pronounced integrity like a new car she hadn't quite paid off. Jerome clipped it with B-roll of Thorne cutting a ribbon last year in front of a different project that never finished. He didn't add commentary. He framed her smile next to the weathered plywood and let the juxtaposition work like acid. Is this what victory feels like? Elena asked one evening, standing with Darius under a half-installed awning while the sky melted into the copper color of exhausted sun. No, he said. This is what not losing looks like. She nodded. I filed for whistleblower protection today. You should have had it the minute you pressed send, he said. I should have had it the day I was hired, she replied. But systems love secrets the way mold loves bathrooms. He handed her a paper cup of Sandy's best. We'll make new systems. She smiled into the steam. That's a young man's sentence and an old woman's command, he said, glancing at Miss Ruby, who sat with Alma on a stack of lumber, teaching her a stitch that could repair sweaters and, rumor said, hearts. On day 11, the clinic wing opened not as a triumph, but as a promise kept in lowercase. The hallway lights flickered once, and then decided to be brave. The portable X-ray hummed like an old refrigerator and behaved better. The waiting room held 8 chairs, 6 patients, and one sign, pay what you can. No one turned away, receipts given for every dollar. Doctor. Martinez wore a smile that looked like it had cut itself in her face with a dull knife, and decided to stay. First patient, she called. A woman named Deidre came in with a cough that had been a roommate for 2 months. She left with antibiotics, a follow-up appointment, and a hand on her shoulder that meant more than the prescription. A teenager named Luis needed stitches and jokes. He got both. Mr. Halperin, who donated nothing but stories for 20 years, donated his story about falling off a step stool, reaching for the kosher salt, and left with a tetanus shot. A local blogger with a camera and a bad haircut tried to stage a gotcha. So where's the plaque? And got a tour of the supply closet and a spreadsheet instead. He posted the spreadsheet. His readers sent money, small and honest. In the afternoon, the city inspector Joe, the one who wore her hair like a declaration, signed the oxygen line sticker with a flourish. Don't make me regret this, she warned. We'll regret it before you do. Dr. Martinez said. In the evening, Alma's union organized a cookout on the gravel patch where grass would go next spring. Children chased each other around stacks of Killeen dried lumber, learning the site's geography like a fort. Jerome's video captured a beam of sunset sliding along the glass and giving it a temporary skin of gold. He cut the footage to a track of a church choir, practicing 4 blocks away, the voices rising through the clank of rebar like vines. That night, Darius found Margaret in the shadow of the east wing, watching neighbors carry folding chairs back to the trailer. She wore a denim jacket that tried to blend. "You can help," he said, before she asked. "Saturday. We're painting the ground floor corridor. White. Boring. Luminous. Bring clothes you don't mind ruining." She nodded, eyes wet. "I have a closet full of ruin." He passed her a brush. "Good. Then you won't mind when the paint refuses to come out." She laughed, a sound that broke and repaired itself mid-flight. Harold called. She added, "Quiet. Did you answer?" "No." "A beat. Do you think that's cowardice?" "I think it's triage." She considered that, then looked toward the trailer where Miss Ruby and Sandy were washing pans in a plastic bin like it was 1959. And dignity had only just been invented. "I brought documents," she said. "Personal copies. Years of them. Petra will friend them." He said, "Archive." Margaret asked. "Friend," he repeated. "We keep what helps and let the rest die." She took a breath that sounded like a choice. "Okay." The night before the oversight session, Darius couldn't sleep. Not the buzzing insomnia of fear, but the restless accounting of a mind inventorying itself. He walked the fence with the coin warm in his palm and the radio of a security guard murmuring some baseball game that didn't matter to anyone on the field either. At the gate, the chain clinked a small metal lullaby. Across the street, a figure leaned on a lamppost, pooling shadow. Lowry hat low, hands buried, posture like a man fighting the urge to spit on his own shoes. "You gonna put me in your film?" Lowry called. When Darius got close enough to decline, "Only if you do something interesting," Darius said. Lowry snorted. "Does interesting pay?" "No," Darius said, "but it costs more." Lowry looked at the site like a man eyeing a house he hadn't built and wanted to resent properly. "You think a building changes anything?" "No," Darius said. "People do. Buildings are what we ask to hold our promises when our hands get tired." Lowry's mouth tugged, a failed smirk. "All this poetry and you still sign checks? Congratulations." "I sign names," Darius said. "Checks just hitch a ride." Lowry pushed off the lamppost. "You talk like a politician." Darius shoved his hands in his jacket pockets. "That's an insult where I come from." "You'll learn," Lowry said, "or you'll lose." "Maybe both," Darius said. "Most people do." They stood there with the hum of the streetlight between them. Moths, committing small, loud suicides against a plastic lens. A city bus whooshed past, and on its side, the ad had been replaced. "Civic pride. It's what we do when no one's watching." It was corny. It was also true enough to be useful. Lowry walked away without farewell. Darius didn't watch him go. He turned the coin across his knuckles. It flashed once and vanished. The way hope does, when you wear it properly close enough to feel, quiet enough not to sell. The oversight session felt less like a hearing and more like a market where truth and reputation haggled for inches. The chamber filled early teachers in their Saturday best, nurses who had just come off night shift and didn't trust chairs, to be honest. Cole set up easels with printed boards, timelines, line items, heat maps of spend by zip code. Alma sat with 3 stewards flanking her like punctuation. Thorne gavelled them to attention and tried a smile. It didn't quite loosen. "Mr. Johnson," she said, after the AG deputy read the receivership terms for the benefit of the cameras. "You requested time." Darius carried no notes. Petra carried plenty. He didn't look at hers. He looked at the 8 faces sitting at the dais, each an angle from which the city pretended to be whole. "We're building," he said. "You can come see at lunch." There was a small ripple of laughter. He let it pass. "We've paid wages on time. We've opened the clinic's first wing. We've posted receipts, not hashtags." We are boring on purpose. He pointed at Cole's boards. We're here to ask for 2 permissions and 1 protection. Permission to fast-track the kitchen permits if we pass inspection. Permission to repurpose an unused line item for bus tokens, so patients can get to us. Protection for our whistleblowers and volunteers from harassment by officials who confuse history with entitlement. Tone blinkte harassment, then rearranged her face to something like neutrality. Specific officials, she asked. Names in the packet, Petra said, handing a binder to the clerk with timestamps, recordings, and in one case, a forwarded text that forgot to delete the previous thread. A chuckle turned into an uncomfortable cough in the second row where city staff sat with their lanyards tangled. Cole stepped to the mic like a witness prepared to answer with verbs only. The project is solvent in escrow under my control, she said. The community leadership has complied with every directive. The contractors are at work as we speak. The clinic is open with 3 volunteer physicians and a scheduling system better than the hospital's. If you want it to fail, you'll need to sabotage it, but do it on camera. The cameras loved that. Harold's seat on the side remained empty. Victor's wasn't. He rose and attempted to look civic. With respect, he began. Always a tell that disrespect was dressing in the phrase behind it. We must not normalize the politicization of philanthropy. Cash flow is a delicate ecosystem. The board's intent, the board is dissolved, the AG deputy said, not looking up from his notes. Victor swallowed. Then let me speak as a citizen concerned about precedent. Precedent, Petra said softly, is how we ended up here. Thorne called for public comment. Ms. Prieto spoke first 5 sentences that made 4 council members dab their eyes and one stare at the ceiling like it owed him an excuse. Big Mike laid out a supply invoice and a story about a kid who learned to fillet a fish in the cafeteria space. They hadn't finished framing. Sandy held up last week's cash reconciliations and, when a finance guy smirked, invited him to check the math on live camera. He declined, and she winked into someone's lens, like an accomplice in a caper where the loot was decency. Finally, Elena stepped up. She wore a plain blue sweater and a look that had learned how to hold, not hide. I was complicit, she said. Then I wasn't. If you need a villain to feel good, you can make me your practice dummy, but the receipts are public. So are the patients. Choose the side you want your grandchildren to quote. Thorne cleared her throat. We will take this under advisement. You'll take it under a spotlight, Cole said. Next, the council voted 6-2 to approve the kitchen permits fast-track pending inspections and 5-3 to allow the token program out of the authorized repurposing line. The whistleblower protection died in a tie until the AG deputy leaned into his mic and mentioned the phrase retaliatory exposure and criminal, and then the tie shifted like a chair leg on a warped floor. Motion passed. They broke into applause not because victory belonged here, but because relief needed somewhere to sit. Afterward, in the hallway, Margaret touched Darius's elbow. He called again, she said. What did he want? To be told he was still him. Is he? No, she said, but he could be someone else. Then that's his work. Darius said. How do you carry not hating him? She asked. He rolled the coin. I pick up heavier things. She nodded, tears carving clean lines into a face the camera had once insisted would never crack. Let me know where to stand tomorrow. West Wing, he said. Primer coat. It's the ugliest part. It's also the one that decides if the top coat tells the truth. At dusk, the crew locked the last tool chest, and the site exhaled. Across the avenue, the church door opened. The choir's voices slid out. Thin at first, then Vida, like paint across a wall. Children chalked hopscotch grids on dry patches of asphalt. Numbers crooked, joy straight. Miss Ruby sat on a low wall, feet not quite reaching the gravel. She patted the spot beside her. Darius sat. You said a sentence, she said, eyes on the glass, picking up the day's last light. Which one? Integrity doesn't need funding, it needs witnesses. I heard it replayed 6 times on the news. Felt like you were telling me to put on my Sunday hat and sit up straight. He smiled. I was telling folks we can't afford liars. She nodded. You keep collecting witnesses, baby. And you keep being one. A breeze cooled the sweat along his spine. In the mirror of the glass, he saw himself and the whole mess, the cranes, the tarps, the people who would be stories if anyone cared, the people who were becoming stories because they cared for each other. You think we'll make it? He asked. Miss Ruby didn't hesitate. We already are. Making it isn't a finish line. It's a daily chore. He laughed. Like dishes, she agreed. And you never did mind dishwater. He turned the coin one more time, then set it on her palm. Hold this tonight. It's heavier in my pocket than it should be. She closed her fingers around it. I'll keep it shiny. He stood, looked at the fence, the gate, the lock. He looked at the sky. The color of a bruise, fading into a healing you could not see if you stared too close. Tomorrow, the kitchen would start its inspections. Tomorrow, the token program would test its first bus transfer. Mrs. Nopson's Prieto and Luis's abuela, hands clasped around a strip of paper, more dignified than a ride for free. Tomorrow, Cole would bang on the trailer door at 6:58 a.m. with a stack of invoices and a joke that wanted badly not to be one. Tonight, he would walk the perimeter and listen to the building creak like a ship ready for sea. At the corner, Jerome lifted his camera. One more, he said. For what? For the part of the documentary where you don't know how it ends. Darius faced the lens. You couldn't see fear in the frame if you lit it right, but you could see resolve if the subject let you. He let it. Roll. Jerome said. They did. The rain that once beat against courthouse glass is a memory now, just a faint shimmer on the lobby's skylights as sunlight filters through. 3 years have passed. And yet, some mornings, Darius still hears that echo, the sound of water, the pulse of judgment, the crowd chanting outside. Today, it's different. Today the crowd is singing. Banners ripple in the mild wind. 5th anniversary of the Darius Johnson Community Center. Kids in matching blue t-shirts dart between tables of baked goods, job training exhibits, and volunteer sign-ups. In the courtyard, a jazz trio plays an upbeat version of Lean on Me. The brass catches sunlight and scatters it across the glass walls that once reflected only uncertainty. Inside, the hum of preparation fills the air. Darius, now 25, stands by the window of his office, overlooking the atrium. His hair is shorter, his suits sharper, but his eyes, the same dark, steady calm, still hold that quiet vigilance. Press in 10 minutes. Elena says, poking her head through the door. She's traded her badge for a position on the foundation's new ethics board. The world calls her a whistleblower. Darius just calls her the reason the truth survived. They'll want you to talk about numbers. She adds, numbers are fine, he replies, straightening his tie. But I'll talk about people. Behind him, framed photographs line the wall. Miss Ruby, on the porch, had oxygen tank gone, laughing in the sunlight. The first graduating class of the construction program, each holding a hard hat with initials stenciled in paint. Margaret, testifying, hand raised, her face etched with both shame and courage. A faded newspaper clipping integrity hearing ends in foundation overhaul. Darius traces the frame with his fingers. The The past doesn't haunt him now. It instructs him. He remembers the last time he saw Harold Whitmore. It was a year after the trial, in a hospice room, with 2 white sheets and rain tapping gently on the window. "You were right," Harold had said, voice rasped by age and regret. Character outlives capital. Darius didn't reply at first. He just looked at the man who had once tested him like a lab rat. "I built institutions," Harold continued, "but I never built trust. That's what ruined me." Then, with a faint smile, "Don't make my mistake. Build people, not monuments." When Darius left that room, the rain had stopped, but the line stayed like a heartbeat inside the walls of the center. Back in the present, the atrium fills. Reporters, donors, students, neighbors all gathered. Margaret steps onto the stage first. She's thinner now, her silver hair tucked beneath a soft scarf. Her foundation, newly reformed under independent oversight, has helped replicate the Elm Street model in 7 other states. 5 years ago, she begins, this was a boarded-up mall. Today, it's proof that community is not a charity case. It's a partnership. Applause swells. She turns toward Darius with something like maternal pride. And none of this would exist without a 17-year-old dishwasher who believed kindness could be policy. He joins her at the podium. The crowd hushes. He looks out at the faces: students, doctors, janitors, retired teachers, children on parents' shoulders. A sea of ordinary lives bound by something extraordinary. "When I was 17, he begins, "I thought wealth was what fixed things. But I learned something harder. Money builds walls faster than it builds bridges, unless integrity is the blueprint." The room stills. Camera lights glint off the glass like miniature suns. 5 years ago, this community didn't need saving. It needed seeing, and when we started seeing each other, really seeing, the healing began. He gestures to the second-floor balcony, where the youth tech lab glows through transparent partitions. Over 2,000 people have earned certifications here. Hundreds found jobs, started businesses, or went back to school. But those are numbers. What matters are stories. He points toward the crowd. There's Miguel and Rosa, who fixed the roofs you're standing under. Mrs. Carter, who learned computers at 60 and now runs our inventory system better than I do. Jerome, who once doubted every scholarship, now mentoring the next class. A murmur of pride ripples through the crowd. Darius pauses. The silence is heavy but warm. Someone once told me, integrity doesn't need funding. It needs witnesses. So if you're here today, you're not just attending, you're testifying. You're proving that doing right still matters, even when it's not easy, even when no one's watching. The applause is thunderous. Elena wipes at her eyes discreetly. After the ceremony, Darius steps outside for air. The afternoon sun turns the wet pavement into mirrors. Kids chase reflections. Somewhere, a saxophone drifts into a slower tune. A reporter follows him out. Director Johnson. "Quick question. What's next for Elm Street?" He smiles. Modest, deliberate, less charity, more ownership. "The next 5 years, we'll phase out foundation funding and hand the keys to the community board. True success means they don't need me anymore." The reporter blinks. "You'd walk away." Darius looks at the glass facade, where his own reflection mingles with the people moving behind it. "I was never meant to own it," he says quietly, "just to prove it could belong to them." That evening, long after the crowd has gone, the center is still alive. Light spills from the adult education wing, where a new class has started, Financial Literacy 101. At the front sits Jerome, teaching from a whiteboard, his sleeves rolled up, chalk dust on his fingers. In the last row, a boy about 16 hunches over a borrowed notebook. His name tag reads, Jalen. When the class ends, he lingers by the vending machine. Nervous. Mr. Johnson. Darius turns. Yeah, Yala hesitatus. I wanted to thank you. For this place, my mom said you started it from nothing. Not from nothing, Darius says. From a diner. The boy frowns. Confused. Darius laughs softly. Long story. Maybe someday you'll write the next chapter. Yala nods, shy but inspired. He leaves, clutching his notebook like a promise. Later that night, the center quiets. Cleaning crews hum down the hallways. Lights dim to gold. Darius walks alone through the atrium. He stops at the glass wall where the city lights shimmer through rain residue. For a moment, the reflection splits him one half in the glow of success, the other in shadow still. That boy with bus fare one way. He exhales, then touches the glass. Outside, he can see the faint neon sign of Murphy's Diner still flickering across the street. He crosses over. The bell over the door rings exactly the same. Sandy's daughter runs it now. The counter gleams under new bulbs. Evening. Mr. Johnson, she says, usual seat. He nods and slides into the booth. The same corner where everything changed years ago. A family sits 2 tables away, mother, father, 2 kids, road-weary, counting coins. He watches them for a beat, a soft smile forming. Then he signals the waitress. Put their meal on my tab, he says quietly. When the parents protest, he simply replies, please let me pay it forward. The little girl catches his eye and waves. Darius waves back. As he steps outside, night air wraps around him, cool and bright. Rain begins again, not heavy, just a drizzle that paints the streetlights in halos. Across the center's facade, spotlights project moving images from earlier, the crowd cheering, children dancing, faces glowing in pride. Darius stops at the middle of Elm Street, where puddles mirror the lights. He tilts his head back, feeling the rain on his face. In the window, reflection behind him, the glowing letters read, the Darius Johnson Community Development Center built on kindness. The camera pulls back slowly, rising above the street, above the rooftops, until the center becomes a bright pulse in the sleeping city. A heartbeat of light that keeps time with the rhythm of rain. Kindness started this, integrity built it, and somewhere out there, another 17-year-old is making a choice he doesn't yet know will change everything, because transformation isn't a miracle. It's a decision made again and again, until the world begins to look like the people brave enough to believe in it. Fade out. Soft piano echoes, blending with rain. This story, like life, didn't offer easy answers. It showed us that integrity is not a spotlight moment, but a daily choice, often made in the shadows of judgment and beneath the heavy weight of systemic bias. We watched Darius, a young man profiled and underestimated, refuse to let external narratives define his internal worth. His simple act of kindness, the coin he offered in the rain, was not charity. It was a defiant declaration of self-respect in a world that tried to deny him dignity. For many of us, the hardest battles are fought against the toxic silence that surrounds social injustice and the quiet compromises we make to just get along. This narrative holds a mirror up to our own communities, asking where we stand when the line is drawn between compassion and compliance. It reminds us that prejudice and class division are not abstract concepts. They are the heavy doors that slam shut on real human potential. Yet, the enduring lesson is that a genuinely good heart is priceless. As the old saying goes, what goes around comes around. But sometimes, the truest reward is simply knowing you were brave enough to stand on the right side of the storm. Now, we invite you to take the story's lessons with you. Where in your own life have you seen integrity tested, or where have you chosen kindness over compliance? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Your voice is the final, powerful chapter of this message. If this story resonated with your spirit, please like this video to help us reach others, and subscribe to join a community dedicated to dramatic, thought-provoking narratives that challenge us to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. Until we meet again, may you find peace and quiet strength in the truth that lives within you.